Welcome to the 20th and possibly final Gophercises episode. So in this exercise, we're going to be building PDFs, but before I jump into that, let me just go back to what I just said. This is probably going to be the last exercise for a while. I might come back at some point and add a couple more exercises, tweak some of these, do some other changes like that. But for now, I think 20 is a pretty solid number for a number of exercises to get practicing with. And the whole purpose of this whole course has just been to practice building things, to get familiar with writing some Go code, and just to give you some projects that you can work on that aren't super overwhelming, hopefully. I know some of them are a little bit harder than others. That's somewhat intentional. And I didn't necessarily try to tier them from easiest to hardest, because what's hard for one person is not always hard for another. And I don't want people to think, oh, if I can't get this one, I can't get any of the rest of them. I really just want people to try to do them all and just sort of see what they learn from, see which ones work for them, see which ones are interesting for them. So anyway, in this exercise, I wanted to do something a little bit special to sort of close out the course. And I had some people ask about building PDFs. So the first thing that came to mind was to do a course completion certificate. So we're going to do that eventually. That's going to be like the last video of all of these. And I want to do that because, a lot of websites just give you a course completion certificate. I think it's really cool to see how those are built, how you can create something that dynamically inserts whoever's name, and sort of goes from there. So the one we're going to make is actually going to look like, let me go down here. It's going to look something like this. Let me zoom out a little bit. You can see here it's nothing amazing. It looks decent. Our font options are kind of limited because you can use more fonts with the PDF library we're going to be using, but you have to actually point it to like where those fonts are, and there's a couple other things that are a little bit more confusing with it. And I also didn't know that everybody following along was going to have the same fonts, so I stuck with just the default fonts it supports. But you could actually, for this certificate of completion, you could get like a real nice fancy font. If we go to this part here, you could always use like a font that looks like a signature. You could even get an actual signature image and embed it in there. I think the package we're using supports JSignature, which is this little tool here that basically allows you to write some signature and then turn it into SVG. This is like the only SVG support that it seems to support from what I've seen. But you could get a signature from this and use that to actually put a signature inside of this, this course completion certificate. So we're going to do that in the final part. But before that, I wanted to look at something that I think is a little more common. Most of us aren't actually creating course certificates of completion for stuff. Most of us are doing something like this, an invoice. So you sell some product, some user comes along and they decide, they want to buy it, but they need to invoice it. They need something to give to their boss or something. I don't know. There's just different times where people need invoices for different reasons. So our goal at first is going to be building this invoice. And it's going to seem like a lot at first, especially because the very first video after this one, all we're going to be doing is just learning how to write some text, draw some shapes, and do some basic stuff. So, it's going to seem like a lot. And this package we're going to be using GoFPDF, which is linked somewhere, I hope. I think it's down here in the notes. Yeah, it's right here. Let me open it in a new tab. And there's a lot to this. Like if you go to the docs for this, there's a ton of functions here. It does a ton of different things, and some of them are going to be confusing. So to give you an example of some of the things that might confuse you, there's different types of colors you have to set. You have to set draw color, fill color, and text color, and there might be others too, I'm not sure. So draw is like the outline of whatever you're drawing, or if you're drawing a line or something. The fill color is if you tell it to like make a rectangle and fill it, that's what it's going to use for the fill color. The text color is, obviously for the fonts, and you might get confused because you expected the draw color to affect that. In addition to those, some of these functions will sometimes have you provide an X and a Y coordinate that it starts from, and maybe that'll be like the top left-hand corner of whatever you're creating. Other times, you sort of move around the PDF you're working with. There's a function here called move that'll actually move you to a specific X and Y coordinate, and basically the idea is that like as you're writing text and stuff like that, it sort of keeps track of where you are with some of the stuff. But it can be confusing because some of these are going to be moving you, some of them aren't. And I don't know, to me, that was like one of my biggest pet peeves of this whole package, was that it wasn't hard to figure out which ones needed that and which ones didn't. But it was one of those things where I found myself, to make sure my code always worked, just always using something like move to, and just always constantly setting my X and Y. So for me, it probably would have been easier just to design the package so that you always just provide an X and a Y coordinate. So there are a couple things that are like, weird caveats with that. And I say all this, let me go ahead and preface this with like, this is a really awesome tool because it has a ton of different features and a lot of support for all sorts of different things with building PDFs. And, it gets all of that stuff out of the way for you. So I don't mean to like bash the package or anything. I definitely don't mean to do that. It's an awesome package. I'm really glad that it was created and it's, a ton of fun to use. I'm just saying that there are some things that as I went through it, I was thinking I could see somebody getting caught up on this or somebody not reading the docs, not quite understanding it. So definitely read through the docs anytime you're using a function. So, and then look at the examples and that sort of thing for things like add page and different stuff that you might be using. I would basically just find an example like this one. This is a really simple one. Use it. And then if you want to use other things, there are examples. There's a ton of examples. There might be an easy way to run them. I didn't see it, but you can look at the code and kind of get an idea of what it's doing and then try to, make your own small isolated example so you can see how it works. So I think that's everything. I mentioned we're going to be building this invoice. We're going to try to do it with some data like this. So this is just sort of a quick struct that has unit name, which is this part here on the left. It's got a price per unit, which is this part here, and it's got a quantity purchase or units purchased, which is quantity, which is going to be shown here. And then we calculate the amount. This is supposed to be faded like the rest of them. That was an accident. I fixed this in one of the PDFs, but then I had the old screenshot that I still used. And then at the bottom, we calculate the subtotal. But like, if you look here at every single line, I added a couple items. I've got one here with a really long name to test word wrapping. So I've got a couple of different things in there that we're going to look at as we go through this. And I even have in the bonus section that one of the things you can also look at is how do we go to second pages? Like, let's say this whole thing goes down to here and we know we're at this spot. How do we calculate we're at this spot? We're about to go off the page. How do we create a second page, especially if we want the second page maybe to have the same header or maybe to have a different header but the same footer. So maybe we want to do just a small, stripe here at the top with the purple color or maroon color we have. And maybe we want to put page numbers on here, so we need to sort of calculate what pages we're on and stuff like that. So there's a lot of ways you can improve upon this. I'm just going to focus on the, how do we get this one-page PDF going, because I think that's going to cover a lot of use cases off the get-go. And then if you find that you're in a situation where you need more, definitely explore the package and see what else you can do. So I think that's it. So the ordering of the videos right now off the top of my head, what I'm guessing they're going to be is one, we're going to just learn some of the package, learn how to draw some text and shapes and stuff like that. That'll be the next video. After that, we're going to start working on the invoice. And in the process of doing this, I expect we're going to build some little helper functions that'll help us along the way. And I don't know if the course or the invoice will end up being split into many different videos. What I'll probably do is I'll probably do like a video for the banner. I'll do another video for maybe this section here. And then I'll do like a third video for the table down here with all the amounts. That way I can try to split it up, because it's not that the code is like really challenging necessarily. It's just that it can be kind of a lot, especially when you're trying to mess with the design stuff. The whole reason I coded this ahead of time was getting this pixel perfect so it actually looks good and starting to understand the stuff. And it's still not even perfect. You can see these two line up, but amount doesn't seem to perfectly line up. So, maybe I needed to tweak something that I didn't tweak. So that type of thing is a little bit harder. And another thing to remember is that like for this type of thing, like we have this PDF, there might be ways in the future that you can just generate headers like this and sort of keep them static. Because once you do this, you can kind of use it for all your PDF generation. It's not something you have to rewrite every time. So you could sort of build some tools like that. So yeah, the second set of videos, I suppose, is going to be for that invoice. And then the third set of videos are going to be for the course completion certificate, this one down here. And this one's going to be much faster, much easier once you've learned how to do this stuff, because this one's a much easier PDF. And finally, I'm hoping to do at least one quick example, maybe a video or something, that shows you some of the ways that if you don't love the way the package is necessarily being written, so like maybe you don't love this fact that some of these functions take in an X and Y and some don't, maybe you want it to be that you always just move around and every single function just assumes I'm drawing this wherever the person currently is on the page. And you can do that by sort of wrapping some of the stuff you have. There's also some other things you can do with colors that you can wrap with. And I just want to give you a rough idea of what I mean by that. And I think I did it with some other packages and some other code before, but it's really just all about, you don't have to use this package exactly as it is. You can build a package on top of it that makes it easier for you to use it. And then when you go to make your PDFs, especially if you plan on making maybe 6 different PDFs over time or something, you could just sort of build this helper on top of it that makes it sort of conform to what you would expect it or hope it to be like. Okay, so I think that's it. We're going to jump into the code in the next video. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is learn how to use this package. And I'm going to be working from some notes, which is something I don't do on all of these. I just want to make sure I cover everything that I plan on using, at least most of the basics, so that when we get to the video, I don't want to spend a ton of time reading the docs. I'll point you to the docs and let you look at them, but I just don't want to spend, an extra hour on all these videos just reading the docs to you, telling you every little detail of them, or even like the design parts. I don't want to have to figure out the design aspects of this while we're on screen. I've mostly figured it all out myself, and I'll explain how I got there, but I just don't want to spend, a ton of time doing that, because that's something you can experiment with. And really the way I did it was just messing around until I got things right. So I've got the README up. I don't want the README. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go P1, and for part 1, that way I can keep the branches separate. I'm going to code main.go. I wanted main.go, not main. Yeah. Code main.go. Okay, so we get package main, func main. What I need to do at this point is I need to create a PDF document. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to go to the Go PDF docs, which I just got here by going through the links that were in the description. I'm going to go ahead and just make sure this is installed. I know it's installed, but you're going to want to make sure it's installed. And then later on to receive updates, you can do this, but I should be updated, so I'm not worried about it. I'm going to grab this right here, come back, paste it in, save it, and this is going to save to hello.pdf. I'm going to name it p1.pdf, just so at the end all of them are sort of there and you can see them. All right, so it looks like what this is doing is it's creating a new PDF document. This right here, this first argument's the orientation string, so it's going to be either orientation, portrait, or landscape are the two. The next one is the unit string, these right here. So there's a couple options. There's like millimeters, there's point, which I'm not exactly sure what the point's supposed to be, because it's not pixels that I can tell. But I don't really know. There's one that's inches, there's centimeters, and there's maybe something else. This next part is the document, like the type of document. So A4 is one. There's also letter, which is what we're going to use. I think that's I think that's the standard in the US, but I don't really know. And then we got font dir string. That's this last part. This is where you sort of define the custom directory, or like whatever directory on your computer has your fonts. So if you start adding special fonts here, it'll know about them. And then I'm going to go to the set font definition here. So all I did was, if you right-clicked and go to definition, that's what I did. I just used the shortcut. This talks about a lot of the fonts. And whenever it talks about them, where is it? Basically, there's 4 fonts that are guaranteed to be there. And if I recall correctly, they're basically Courier, Courier, Arial, Times, are the 3. And there's symbol, which we're not going to use. So we're going to use Courier as a fixed width. It's like a programming type font. Arial is going to be just, Arial font everybody's used to, and Times is just going to be a serif font. So Times is going to be a little bit more like typewriter-ish is how I'd put it, I guess. Arial is going to be like the sort of letters that you're probably used to seeing in a lot of websites and stuff like that, I'm guessing. Although you probably see serif too. Anyway, I'm getting distracted here. So we got the font Arial. Second part is the bold for the font, and the third part is the size. And again, you can read through the docs for all of these. They're all in the in the docs. Add page is going to, I think it just adds a page. I'm not even sure how much you need it, because I know some of these operations will end up creating a new page for you. So I'm not sure how much of these you need. But I don't know if all the operations necessarily create a new page for you. So maybe sometimes you need to do stuff like this. It'll talk about some of this stuff here. Apparently there's a footer method and some ways to output a footer, and there's a bunch of other things, but we're not going to do too much to that. We apparently have a page format. So we're not doing that now, but, well, this looks just to be orientation and page size, so that's nothing too crazy. Okay, so I'm going to change some of this. Well, let's just run this first. And I don't need this error, but I'll say if error is not equal to nil, panic with the error. And let's go run main.go. Let's open P1. And this is our doc. I'm going to bring it down a little bit so you can see the whole thing. Maybe zoom out some. There you go. So it's just a document that says hello world in an Arial font. So I don't like these being strings. It's not that strings are terrible. It's just that, like, if you read this, it's not entirely clear what all of this is all the time. So what I'm going to do is the package actually provides a couple of these for you. So there's orientation, landscape, and portrait. So I can use that. I can do gofpdf dot, I think this is, there's like unit, there we go. Centimeter, inch, millimeter, and point. So I'm going to use point. I'm not really sure what the difference is, but gofpdf dot, is there anything with a page size letter? There we go. And this last part is the fonts directory I can leave empty. And I think this is just a little bit clear what's going on. If I had written the package, I might have even considered changing these to be custom types, so it was a little bit easier to look for all the definitions of it. But I'm not trying to say this is bad or anything. I'm just not. I like reading this. I think it's a little bit clearer what's going on, even though it's a little bit more code. These are maybe a little bit more verbose than they always need to be, but it still works fine. So then down here, I don't think there's anything for the font, which it makes sense to a degree. I don't know if there's anything with Arial. Yeah, not. Yeah, I didn't expect there to be anything. Okay. I do know that you can make these fonts lowercase, so I'm just going to go ahead and do that. And I'm doing it because throughout the rest of this doc, I plan on doing that. So we're going to go ahead and we can keep it bold. That's fine. We're going to change this to 38. And, well, okay, let's go ahead and just start from up here a little bit. I want to get a little bit more information about our page. So one of the things that GoFPDF provides you is a way to do pdf.getPageSize. And this is going to get you the width and the height. And what's really nice about these is that depending on what unit you use, the width and the height is going to change because this is based on that unit. All of your like move to X, move to Y, all of those type things are going to be based on the unit that you choose to use here. So if you're using inches, it's going to be in inches. If you're using millimeters, it's going to be in millimeters. So it gives you a lot of control over the document based on, like, if you know it's exactly 6 inches by 4 inches, you can move exactly where you want to be on it. But for our purposes, where we're just sort of designing it from the ground up, we want to know what the width and height are. Maybe dynamically, it's nice to sort of figure them out. And then, if we wanted to do like an indent, we could say like the X indent is maybe W divided by 10, something like this. So you could say that, only 80% of the document's actually going to be filled in the middle, and then we could use that throughout the rest of our code. And then we need to print these out for it to like not complain about us not using the variables. So I'm going to do printf width equals %v, height equals %v, and a new line. And these are floats, if I recall correctly. Yeah, so I'm just going to do %v, so I don't have to think about that, though. All right, so we still got the new page. We're going to look at basic text stuff first. And we've already got some of it here. We talked about this. This cell function, there's this concept of a cell in GoFPDF that's kind of like a block that you can write in. So you can see here it has a width and a height, and you put text strings to it. We're going to use multicell sum, which is similar to this, but basically you can give it a really big string and it'll make it multiple lines if it needs to. It'll handle some word wrapping stuff for you. Cell doesn't do that, so I don't find it as useful, especially since you can just use the text function and you rarely just want text to not show up or something. So I didn't tend to use this very much. What I used was something like pdf.text, and then I would give it an actual X and Y that I wanted to work from. So maybe something like 0, and we can't do 0 here. Let me delete this part. So we could do set text this, and we could say hello world. And this is not going to really work for us. I'll run it, show you, and then I'll explain why. So you can sort of see that something is up there. So what happened is whenever we did the 0, 0, it's like the bottom left corner of our font, and that's clearly not going to work. So another nice little helper that we get from this GoF PDF package is you can do point size, which is just the font size. And so I don't actually need that because I know it's 38, but you can also get line height. And this is going to be like in this unit that we're using, this unit point. It's going to be the size of our font. And this is really nice because it allows us to sort of set things, based on how large we expect line heights to be. So for instance, I can do pdf.get font size. That's how you get these two. And then down here, I could actually say, like, I want to do this at line height. So instead of being at the very top of the document, I'm moving down exactly whatever the height of the line is going to be. So now if I run this, you'll see that this shows up on the screen perfectly because it took the actual height of this line, or what it expected it to be. There might be some variation with the fonts and stuff like that, but it moved down exactly like one line height worth, and then we wrote it, so this works really nicely for us. So you'll see me using this line height stuff a lot, especially because whenever you're trying to figure out how much to move down from a specific line, sometimes that line height is very handy to sort of do things like, like when you're writing a document, like whenever you're in high school or something, you probably had to do like a double spaced, report or something like that. So the double spacing, to get that, all we do is line height times 2, something like that's really easy to do. You can also just do like line height times 1.5, to get yourself a little bit more in a single line height, a little bit of like padding in between. So it allows us to sort of get a decent distance between lines that's relative to the font size that we choose to use, so that later if we go change this font size, let's say we make this 15 and we run this all over again, you can see it got moved up. It didn't end up starting down here with a big gap at the top. So that's where this line height really comes into play. I'm going to go ahead and put some separation here. The other thing that I want to look at is set text color. And this is really just going to be an RGB value. So we can do something like 255, 00, and this is going to be a red. And we can run this, and we've got a red hello world. So that's most of the font stuff. We're going to do some other things with this. We're going to use like Multicell. I can show you that here. Just give me 1 second. Let's say we did pdf.set font times, so you can see the times font. We don't do bold, and we do 16 as the font size. This last part's a float, so you can do like 0.0 here too. All right, so we do that. What we want to do is we want to write. We're going to be using Multicell, which is like cell. It actually cares about where you are in the document. So to move around, you're going to use pdf.moveTo, and you're going to give it an X and a Y. So I'm just going to say like 0, 200 is where we're going to move to, which is going to be far left side of the document. That's the X. And 200 is we're going to go 200 units down. And that's going to be pretty far. Maybe we don't want 200. Maybe we'll do line height times 2. That's this line height here. I will say that one of the things not always, but one of the things you might want to do is like move your line heights right after you write. So right now we're probably at 00, so we could just guarantee that. Move to 00. We'll do all this writing, and then down here we'll say pdf.moveTo 0 line height times 1.5. So that'll move us down, and this works on the assumption that most of these things like Multicell are going to be the top left corner of whatever you're doing. I think that's the case with Multicell. I could be wrong though. So let's just do 2.0 to be safe. So we do 2.0, and then down here, we might want to do something like underscore line height is going to be pdf.get font size, because we did change the font size here. So we need to make sure we update this line height so we have the most accurate one, based on our fonts. Because, for instance, we might have made this 18, which is a little bit bigger. And we could make this, let's make it 30. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to use the pdf.multicell. And this takes a whole bunch of arguments. We got width and height, which is the width of the multicell. And then the height part is a little bit different. As I said before, multicell is like that one cell we did before to write some text at the very, this example that comes here. The height for this is actually going to be the height per line. So as it needs to word wrap, that height is going to be applied to the next line. So it's not actually the height of the entire block. It's like the height of an individual line. So let's say we'll do width is going to be, if you set 0, it does just like the width of the document. And I think that makes sense for what we're doing right this second. The next part, the height, we're going to do line height times 1.5. So, we're going to do like a little bit more than regular line height spacing. And then for the string, I'm going to actually copy something from my notes. It's really just a long string with some new lines in it. So the new line is here to show you that multicell will split into new lines on new lines. Most of the other ways that you write text, like text, don't do that. So, you know, the new lines aren't going to do a lot there. In this one, it should actually split to a new string, or split to a new line. It'll also split to new lines as it needs to based on the width that you set, and the line, or, you know, and just the width is the big thing. And the font size, I guess, is going to make a difference. And then we wanted to hear the border string. There is some there are some constants here, so we're going to do border none. And then the align string, because multicell, like each line height is just like the height of it, we don't really care about the vertical orientation, but there are some ways to align, you know, middle, top, and things like that. And if you wanted to do like middle center, I believe what you do is you do like align middle plus go fpdf dot align, like, let's do right. And that should do it. But I'm just going to go ahead and just do the right. And then this last part, this fill, although I guess we could do we could actually align top or bottom, because this is line height's a little bit bigger. This last part, fill, I don't remember exactly what it does. I think it has something to do with whether or not to move the cursor, so this move to part. But I found that it's just easier most of the time to just explicitly move to wherever you want to be. So I just put false for this and just let it be. And then let's change our font color for this too. You don't have to, but pdf.set text color. Let's do like a grayish. All right, let's run this, see what we get. And you'll see here we've got the text that eventually runs into the if. You know, right here, there's not a new line. This is just word wrapping because it got too big. This next part eventually gets to a new line, and that's why it's word wrapping. And then this third line doesn't need to word wrap, so it doesn't. So that's what we see here. And you can see if I change this to be maybe like ×3, run this, these have much bigger spacing. If I just use like line height, it's going to keep them pretty tight together. So you sort of choose which of those makes the most sense. And I don't know, in my experience when you're building PDFs, I find it easier just to sort of keep opening the PDF as you build it, toy with it, find out what design you think looks good, and then run it. You might eventually have some issues, you know, if you are producing like multi-page PDFs, you might have some weird oddities that you run into, and you can fix them then, address them then. But I find that a lot of the times you're generating very similar documents, like an invoice, and a vast majority of them are going to be like maybe one page, or if you do have multi-page ones, you can quickly figure out, you know, that's the only really variation you need to do is, you know, take that table you have and just test different ways of making it go multiple pages. So it's not too bad to do that. And you can always keep track of, like, you know, through these things, you can figure out where your X and Y are and sort of track if you're about to overwrap on the page and try to figure out some stuff like that. Okay, so the last few things I want to look at, one is drawing shapes. So we're going to look at a rectangle and a polygon. There's also a line, but it's really not that interesting. You just give it to an X0 and a Y0 and an X1 and a Y1, and it draws a line. And then I want to look at images, so how to draw an image onto the PDF as well. So let's do the basic shapes first. So in this one, there's two colors we need to worry about. So there's pdf.set fill color, and this is going to be like if you fill the inside of a shape, that's what color it gets. So let's say we want to do green. And then you can do pdf.set draw color, and this is going to be like the outline of the color. So you could do something like, let's do blue for this one so you can tell what the difference is. And then we can draw a rectangle. So we can do a pdf.rect, and we can give it an X and Y where we want it to draw it. So let's do like 10, so we're just not quite on the edge. And then I don't know exactly how much space this was taking, and we haven't really calculated where we are, so I'm just going to go ahead and just toss a random value in here. And this is where, like, you know, keeping track of where you actually are in X and Y coordinates is useful, because then you can sort of move based off of that. And we'll even see in one of the videos how you can sort of wrap this whole thing, wrap this package if you want a little bit to make it easier to do some of this. Or I think it's easier, it might not be for everybody. So let's do 100 here. Width, let's do 100 again. The height will do 100, you know, just be a square. And the style string, I don't think there's anything here for, yeah, there's nothing for fill. Basically, you've got two styles, fill and draw, F and D. If you put both, it'll do both. If you put just F or just D, it'll just do those. And I don't think the order here matters. I think either one works. So that should draw our rectangle. Let's go ahead and run this. And you'll see here that we got a rectangle with the blue outline because the blue is the draw color. So when we do F and D, it'll do both fill and draw. If I run this with just fill, we just get that. If we just get the draw, we should just have the outline. So, we've got multiple options here for how we want to do this. And then let's set the fill color to something else. Let's do like a, that's green and blue. I think that's a purplish. No, I don't know. I'm not going to think about it right now. My brain is not working. PDF.polygon is what we're going to look at here. And for points, it's just a slice of these gof.pdf.point types. If you want to look at those, they're really just an X and a Y. So they're just, any sort of coordinate system that you'd expect to see. And it's going to be in the units that we're using, so this unit points. So we're going to go ahead and create a slice of these. And then the style string, this is the same as this style string up above, the F and D. So we're just going to do fill here. And for our points, we're going to do... We start this one at 10, 100, and we draw over about 100. So let's just go ahead and move to the... we definitely want to move either down or right. Let's go ahead and move down. So we'll say that the Y that we're going to start with, we'll start at 10, and then the Y we'll start with is 100 plus 100 at least. So maybe we'll do 250 just to give us some extra space. And then we got to figure out what shape we want. So, I don't know. Let's just do like a diamond, I guess. So let's start, we'll say that we're going to start at 110, so that's how far out we're going. And these points, I should mention, it'll connect them in the order you give them, and then the very last point will connect with the very first point, so you don't have to repeat yourself with that. So I'm going to go ahead and paste these all. If we start at 110 out, that's the X, and 250, if we want to go to the, down and right, so this needs to go right a little bit, so let's say we're going to go over 50. And then we're going to go down, say we're going to go down 50, so this becomes 300. And then if we want to go down and left, this is going to be 160 minus 50, which is 110. And then this is going to become 350. And then finally, we want to go the up and left. So our X is going to, it should be losing some, I think. Trying to make sure I start at the right spot, though. I think we're fine. So we're going to go up and left, so we're going to lose 50 here, so this is going to become 60. And this is going to go to 300 is what we want. And then this point should connect to this point to give us our... Assuming I did this right, it should be a diamond. There we go. So we've got that diamond shape drawn there. And, that's just how you draw a polygon. We could add random shapes here. So we could do 330, and we could do like 70. Run this again, and you'll see that, it ends up being a little bit different. We could also do, if we wanted to do like 230 and 70, it's going to end up drawing upwards a little bit more. So we got this different shape. With the polygon, you have a lot more flexibility as far as what you're doing. And the polygon is what I use a lot in the both the invoice and the course completion document that you'll see. I use that just to draw the triangles that I did to get all the different designs at the top and bottom, because I felt it was pretty easy just to slap those in there. And I also really like the fact that this one doesn't worry about where you are. You just give it a bunch of coordinates and it draws for you. Okay, so the last part is we looked at multicell text. What else did we not look at? I think we've looked at every major thing I want to look at. The last thing I want to do is talk about a grid. So one of the things that I think really helped me jumping into this package, figuring out and just designing, whenever I was trying to design a new PDF, was trying to get a grid system. Like you can see here that I'm adding random numbers, and I know that I can add maybe 50, but if I change this unit up here to unit inch, all of a sudden this document's probably going to look way different. There's like nothing on the screen. What happened? So what happened, I think, is this just unit's so big, there's maybe, did it print out? Yeah, the height went from, or the width went from 612 to 8.5. So clearly those units aren't working, like they're not, we can't be adding 500 and expecting it to work. So when we deal with something like this, it's nice to know like what type of units we need to get us a ballpark like estimate as to how far to move. So what I actually would recommend doing is to create a function like DrawGrid. It's going to take in a PDF, which is a gofpdf.fpdf. And basically I'm going to say WH is going to be pdf.get size, page size. There we go. And then we're going to say for x is 0.0, x is less than w, x is going to be plus w divided by 20.0. And I'm doing this because I'm basically saying, and then I want 20 increments, and I'm going to go across the entire document, and I'm going to draw lines so that I actually have a grid to work from. And I'm going to put numbers on each of those lines so I know exactly what the width, what's the number we're at on the x coordinate for that line. And that'll just make it, that'll just make it easier whenever we come back later and we're trying to, figure out where we should put things. We'll be able to look at that grid system and get a rough estimate of, okay, it's going to be somewhere between like maybe 50 and 75. So some number in that range is what we're looking for. So we're going to say pdf.setFont. Let's do Courier. And we'll do 12 point. pdf.setTextColor. And I want this to be 80, which the color you choose is fine. It doesn't matter. This is like a mostly black, but it's a little bit grayish. pdf.setDrawColor. And I'm going to make this one a little bit lighter. You might need to change yours depending on what all you draw, but this is, it's a really light gray is what I'm doing here. And then the other thing I'll mention, well, I'll do this first. Well, let me say it now that I'm remembering. When you have this draw grid, I'm also planning on running it last. So I'm going to do all of my code, then draw the grid. And the reason I do that is I don't want something else to get drawn over top of my grid. So I always want this to get drawn over top of everything at the very end. So then we're going to do, we've got a draw color and a text color. So we can just go pdf.line. And then for the first line, we're doing vertical lines. So x1 is going to be the x that we're currently at. Y1 is going to be 0, the very top of the document. x2 is still going to be the same x we're at. We want this to be a straight vertical line. And then y2 is going to be the height of the document. And then we're going to get the line height. It's going to be pdf.getFontSize. And we're going to pdf.text. We want this to be at x line height so that it's not above the top of the screen like we saw earlier. And we're going to print something like, let's do sprintf. I just want these to be integers. I know these can be floats, but I don't want to have to think about that. I want it, even if it has to round it, I think that's fine. So I'm going to do %d, and I'm going to cast this x to an integer here. And this needs to be x equals x plus. So that should get us what we need. So x is going to start at 0, and we're going to add, 1/20th of the width every single time. So let's copy this and run it. And then once we have it working, I'm going to actually come back and add the y-axis too. All right, so now you can see what I mean, where we've got 0, 30, 61, 91. This goes the whole way across, and now we have a nice grid to work from as we start to design. And this was just incredibly helpful for designing. And there might be some way in that, I haven't looked in the package to see if there's a way to do something like this. But I found just, the tools are there to quickly draw, make a function to draw this, so it was just super helpful to do it. And then the next part is for y is going to be 0.0. Y is less than the height. Y equals y plus, again, we're going to do height divided by 20.0. Instead of the width, we're doing height here because we're going up and down the height. And the y isn't, it's going to be useful, but it's, I found that most of the time I'm moving up and down based on line heights and stuff like that. So this one wasn't as useful, but it's still very nice to have, especially if you're drawing a document that has absolute sizes and stuff. So to pdf.setFont, I really just want to copy all of this. And I don't need to copy it all. I know all of this is all here, so I can pull it all out. And I don't even think I need this. I don't think that needs pulled out. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to delete these 3 lines. All right, so the line, I want this to be left to right. So our x is going to be 0, far left. Our y is always going to be y, so both of these are going to be y. And then this next one's going to be the width. So it's going to go from the left side, sorry, I didn't mean to hit the mic, all the way to the right side. And then we need to do some text, but I don't need the line height here. I can do, the text is always going to be on the left-hand side, so this is going to be 0. And it can always be exactly where we draw the line because it defines the bottom of it. So we'll just draw write the text right above the line. And then we'll do y here instead of x. All right, so that should, There we go. We got a nice grid system on the left too. Now, if you wanted this to be perfect squares, which this isn't, you could do like W divided by 20.0, and this is going to give you the exact same, it's going to be exact squares, which might be more handy because these are all about the same unit then, but you'll have more lines going left to right or going down. So that's up to you. You got to decide if you want to use it by W or H or how you want to do that. But I think this should get us to a good point where we can, from now on, we can just sort of use this. And then I want to show you how to put an image on the screen. So we're going to go ahead and do that. We're going to do that now that we have the grid and we have something to look from. So let's say we want to do it here. This is 275 for the Y, and let's do 275 for both. So it should come around right here. So we can do PDF.image options. So there's image and image options. Image is the same thing, just you get less options, I think. I don't remember the exact details of what it is, but I know that I used image options because I think it worked a little bit better for what I was doing. So image name string is the path to the string, so images/jump.png, which is this gopher here. And then the X and the Y, we said 275 is going to be what we're going to use for each. And then width and height. So let's go ahead here and look. Let's say we start at 275. Let's say I want it to be about 3 squares wide, so this goes to 367. So you can do 275 minus 367. It's going to be about 92 wide. So we can do 92 here. And then the height, if you put either width or height at 0, it'll basically contain the same aspect ratio and do it that way. I think if they're both 0, it does the raw image at like 91 DPI or something like that. It's in the docs. I don't remember the exacts. Flow here is, I think it's whether or not it moves the cursor, which I'm going to do false. Link, I'm just going to skip over this options first. Link is whether or not this should be a link that you click. And if it is, you give it an index. You can like add links to the document and then you like reference them by their index here. This is the type of thing that I'm not a huge fan of because, most of the time you might not want to make images links. So I almost wish there was a better way to build an image with links or something like that with this library. But I also get that, like, I have no idea how much experience this author has with Go. I also get that, like, this is the quick and easy way to make it work versus, like, making a builder that actually builds up all these image options and then eventually you apply it somewhere. That's a little bit more complicated. So I definitely don't fault the author for this. It was just, it's sometimes a little bit annoying to have to add options you don't use. Okay, so we got 0, because 0 basically just means no link, and this is going to be the link text. I'm just going to put it as empty string. So now the go pdf.image options. Well, here's the type, so we can go ahead and just do this. This type has 2 different fields that we're going to look at, image type and DPI. So image type's possible values are, in their case insensitive, JPEG, JPEG, PNG, and GIF. So, if it's empty, it's going to infer it from the extension. And then the DPI, it's whether or not to read it from the image. Normally it should be set to true. It defaults to false. So really, the first option, the extension is fine for them getting the file type. So we only need read DPI, and we can do true here. Because it says normally it should be true, and we don't really care either way. So that should draw our image for us. So let's go ahead and I think we set the X and Y on this one, so we don't have to worry about moving anywhere. That should be good. Let's go ahead and run this. All right, we've got our gopher. He starts it here. You can see that, like, at the very left side of the image goes there. It's about 3 columns wide. It stops right there, and the height is set by, just aspect ratio. So that's, I think that's all the basics. With this, you have enough to sort of just toy around with the package and go through. And then, if you want to see what something actually looks like without the grid, you just comment out that function call and you can see it all. It definitely looks better without the grid. So I think that's it for right now. The next video, we're going to try to go through creating an invoice. So I'm going to probably break it up into a couple videos. We'll create the banner parts. We'll make the top part with like the the different text and stuff like that. And we'll look at ways to do that. And I think I have it. I think I have a pretty good way of doing it, but I will definitely warn you that I did it the wrong way the first time. I was like just writing .text everywhere, and I was just manually keeping track of like where I was and stuff like that, and it was a we're going to try to do it a little bit better than that. So in this next video, we're going to be taking the same package, the GoF package, and we're going to be trying to create the start of an invoice. So we're just going to mostly focus on the top banner, and I might end up redoing a couple things, and that's fine. Like doing things that the package or the library could already do for us, but that's fine. So the first thing is going to make this p2.pdf. I don't want to mess up what we have. And then I'm going to come through here and just comment out everything we have. I didn't want to do that. I want to go run main.go and open p2.pdf. So we got this. Looking at this, I want to figure out a rough size for the banner, and then I want to be able to draw it. So what I'm going to go ahead and say is somewhere in the ballpark of this 91 is where I see the banner stopping. So maybe, choose a number in that area. So I'm going to first just start by trying to define some constants here. So let's say banner height is going to be, let's say 95.0. And then the other thing that I want to think about is indents. So we obviously don't want text all the way over at this edge. We want to kind of bring it in a little bit. So we need to figure out how far in are we going to bring our indents. And I think somewhere in the middle of here is probably right to start with. So maybe we'll try 40. So we'll do something like x indent is going to be, I want both these to be 4 equals, not colon equals. And I'm putting point zeros on both these to make sure they end up being floats. Basically, I'm just trying to make that easier. Okay, so we've got these two constants. Now I want to draw the banner top. So I'm going to go ahead and set the fill color. So I want pdf.setFillColor. And the color for this, I already know it, so I'm just going to go ahead and use it as 103, 60, and 79. And this is something that, for now, I'm just going to go ahead and do this, but long term, maybe it makes more sense to use some other type of color. RGBs obviously make sense, but maybe you want to have a couple color variables, or maybe you want to create a type or something you use for this, just to make it easier to manage your colors. This is like a dark maroonish color that's used on the top of the Gophercises page. So if I go here, it's going to be like the same color you see in the background. I can actually show that to you, I think. If I can grab this, come over here, and I actually have a plugin that will do hex to RGBA. So this just gives me 103, 60, 79, and that's why it's also highlighting the color a different plugin is. So that's what color we're using. And then I want to do pdf.polygon. So we got points here. And then the style, we just want to fill it. So our points, we want to start in the top left, so that's 0, 0. And then we want to go all the way to the right at the 0, 2. So this is going to be width, comma 0. And then next we want to come down to whatever the banner height is. So we're going to stay in the far right, down the banner height. And then finally, we want to draw our line across. Let me come back here. So we're going across, we're kind of going to come down to about here, and then we want to come across, but we don't want to go straight across, we want to go up a little bit. So maybe we want to make this dynamic. Maybe we want it to be like W and banner height times 0.9. We don't want it to be too obvious of a curve, but a little bit of a curve is what we want. So let's go ahead and run this. Well, that's not right. So where did we mess? Oh, this right here, that's the problem. So right now I'm going from here, I'm going to about here, and then we're drawing a line up to the 0, 0 we started, so that's definitely wrong. What I want to do here is I want to make this a 0. All right, so that's got a slight curve to it. It's hard to see it, but there is a curve there. You can definitely see that this starts above the line, this ends below the line. And if we get rid of the grid, my guess is it'll be more obvious. Yeah, there's definitely a little bit of a curve there, but it's not so much that it's obnoxious. And I'm doing that curve because it kind of mimics the same design I have on the home page here, where there's a slight curve, or not curve, but a slant. Okay, so we want a footer as well, so I'm just going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to pdf.polygon, and I'm going to actually copy everything up here. And for this one, it's going to be roughly the same idea. We're going to start in the bottom left corner, which is 0, and then this is going to be the height. And then we're going to move all the way to the right. So this will be 0, or actually we're going to move up. Yeah, so what I want on the bottom is, let me go ahead and shrink this a little bit. I want the same thing I have up top, but I want it to go from like here down a little bit to the right side. So I have DrawGrid back on, cool. So I'm going to go ahead and start at 0 at the height, as the bottom left. I'm going to go up a little bit, then I'm going to go across, then I'm going to come down and then just let it connect at the bottom, I guess. So what we'll do is we'll go 0 to height, and then we're going to go up. So to go up, we actually need to subtract from the height. You know, we want this value to decrease. That's going up. So we're going to subtract banner height times 0.2. You know, we're just going to do 20% of our banner height. And then we want to go across, so we want to go W, the far right side, and we're going to do H minus banner height, and we want this to go down a little bit, so we're not going to subtract quite as much. So we'll do maybe 0.1, and then finally, we want to end in the bottom right corner, so this is going to be WH. And then if I scroll down here, you'll see that we have the slight curve here on the bottom one and the slight curve at the top. So now if we get rid of all these grids, keep zooming out or zooming in on me. You know, we've got this document that looks, you know, it looks pretty decent. When we start adding text up top too, I think it looks better. So it's just a nice little small footer, and we could change that if we decided that it wasn't working well, but I like the slants there, so I'm keeping them. And you can actually see what this looks like at the end. It's going to look something like this. So, you know, it's nothing too crazy. And so I showed you that we have this. You can actually see that, like, changing this to 150, running. You know, this gets a little bit bigger. The banner definitely gets a little bit bigger. So we can, you know, rotate between different values. We can do 91.0, which I think was the, you know, the line, exactly what the line was. I think 94 is what I used in the final version, so I'm going to go ahead and just keep it. All right, so that should, sorry, it's really hard because this keeps going off screen a little bit. So we got this PDF here. The next thing we want to do is add some text to our banner, and we can just draw this directly on top of, I'm going to go ahead and draw the grid back. We're going to draw this right on top of this top polygon. So I draw the polygons first because I want to put stuff over top of it. So I find it's easier just to get them there up front. And then later as I start drawing things, I can write over top of them and it's fine. So we'll do pdf.setFont. Sorry, I got to like check my notes a little bit because I did most of the styling. We want B for bold and 40 for the size. Then we're going to set the text color to be white, because we're going to be writing over top of that maroon color, so white will show up pretty nicely. We're going to then do, we want to do writing, we want our writing, not here. Actually, I'm actually move this over here. Actually, I shouldn't. So I want my writing to be, let me just go ahead and comment that out and run this. I want my writing to be X indent in, and I want it to be about the middle of here, and I want to write the word invoice right here. So I need to come in X indent, but I know what roughly the height of this section is, and I just want to center it based off of that. So I basically want to say line height is going to be pdf.get font size. And then I'm going to say that where I want to write this text is going to be whatever that font size is, I'm going to, or whatever that line height is, I'm going to take the banner height, subtract that, and then divide it by 2. So that's going to kind of give me a rough estimate for where we should be. I know that probably didn't make sense. So basically if we say banner height minus line height, so this goes ahead and gives us the amount of the banner that's not going to be covered by the text. So, you know, we'll have some small amount. So we're going to basically assume we're at the very bottom, and we're going to subtract whatever's left in half so that we don't go the whole way up, so that we center this text vertically. And there are other ways to vertically center your text in this package. I'm just going to try to do this all manually, though. So we're going to say pdf.text. The X is going to be X indent, and the Y is going to be banner height. So it's going to be banner height minus banner height divided by, or minus this divided by 2.0. And then it's going to be invoice. I think that's it. So let's go ahead and see if that worked. All right, so this doesn't appear to be set correctly. Let's just do it at banner height first and see what we get. Let me comment this out because I'm not using it. All right, so the banner height is here. You know, it doesn't seem to be, well, it's definitely doing it at banner height, that's right. But because this comes up, it might look a little bit weird. So what we might actually want to figure out is, you know, the actual middle. I'm actually just going to go back. So we want to subtract line height. We don't actually need to subtract line height, I don't think. Let's see what it looks like when we do. Sorry, this isn't how I did it the original pass, so I'm like, it's actually not too shabby, not too far off. We could just put it in the middle, so we could do banner height minus banner height divided by 2.0. This isn't going to be right, though. This is going to be based on the assumption that, you know, it's going to put the bottom of it right here at the middle, so that's the middle. And then basically we're going to move it down a little bit based on the line height. So maybe we want to subtract or add line height divided by 2.0. I got to uncomment this again. But again, you're saying that this is moving it down more than we want. I think the reason this is doing it is I think the line height is like a little bit taller than text actually is, so it ends up not looking right. So you can just do something like 1.5, get this working roughly. I wanted to go the other direction. So maybe we want to divide by 3 here. All right, so that's getting close. All right, I think that looks decent. We can sort of work with that. It should be fine. As we put our text on the right, we might realize that this doesn't work very well, but you know, we can sort of mess with it from here. That's one of the downsides of doing a slant too, is that some of the things are going to look a little weird until we get all our text there. And the other thing I'm actually going to do is come down here, the text color. I want it to be different for each one now. I want this to be, let's do 255, 255, 255, or maybe we want these to be just 200. And then we're going to do the text color for the Ys are going to be just the 8080s. And I'm doing that because, you know, now we can actually read these numbers up top. We might even want to do something here where if Y is less than banner height, pdf.set text color 200, 200, 200. Otherwise, we'll set the text color to this other one. And we don't have banner height defined here, so I'm going to go ahead and pull this constant out so it's available everywhere for now. All right, so now you can see that we've got the text that's a little bit more visible here. This 91's a little bit hard, but that's fine. So maybe I wanted to do banner height times 0.9 because that's the number we used before. All right, so now we've got all that. We want to do some text on the right. And this is where we're going to be doing basically multi-cells, I think is what we're going to do. So I'm going to say this is going to be invoice. This is going to be banner. I'm going to label this banner top maroon banner. And then we got invoice. Then we've got, this is going to be the address and company info. It's going to be our address and company info. And we're going to do pdf.set font, Arial, empty string, and 12 point. I'm going to make this lowercase just for consistency. We're going to update the line height. And then I want to do, the text color is already fine. It should be the same, but I'm going to add it just on the off chance that yes, we added some extra code in the middle here. And then we're going to do something like pdf.move to. These values are going to be a little bit weird. I think I just messed around until I got them working. Let's just do the multicell first. Let's do pdf.multicell. So this is going to get a width and a height. So I'm going to say this is going to be about 124.0. And I got this just by messing at this and being like, all right, 0 to this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 4 blocks roughly is like 122. So that's in the ballpark of what I wanted. I think I toyed with it and realized 124 is a pretty decent number. And then the height is going to be, let's do line height times 1.5. And then the text string is going to be, let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. And actually, I need to pause this video. Give me 1 second. Sorry about that. What we're going to do now is we're going to put a new line here. And we're going to do something like john@calhoun.io for my email, and another line, and do gophercises.com for the website. And then the rest of this is going to be, things you can look up in the docs. We're going to do border none. It's just a string, and then this align string, we're going to do gof pdf.align right. And then our fill is going to be false. So let's just go ahead and run this and see what we get. All right, so it's writing right here. And it looks like, the 124 width is giving us up to about here. I feel like that width is wider than it actually should be, but I don't want to mess with it too much now. We know we want to move though. So we got to figure out where we move to write this, to put it. So what I sort of did was I just messed around with values until I got something that I liked, because this is like the banner is going to be kind of fixed, so we can kind of just hard code these in there and get it all working and be done. Where that doesn't work as well and we have to do a little more calculation comes to the whenever we're actually on the table, because the data is going to be a little bit more dynamic there. So we'll try to approach that a little bit more systematically. But for here, I think I just did something like w minus x indent minus 2.0 times 124.0. So this 2 times 124.0 is because I'm going to have 2 blocks. I'm going to have like the phone number stuff, and then to the right I'm going to have actual address stuff. X indent is because I want to move off the right side X indent amount. And I think that's how I did it. So basically I'm saying start all the way at the right, move X indent in, then I'm going to have one section that's 124 wide for the address, so move all the way left from that, and then we're going to move all the way left again for this section that we're going to use, and that's how we're going to use that 124 section. So this one is actually a little bit more systematic than it looks at first. Or it was a little more calculated than it looked at first. And then the X position, basically how I did this was I took banner height, and then I subtracted the line height times 1.5, which is this right here part. And then I have 3 lines times 3.0. So I'm just going to leave these all out, spelled out, even though I could do this math myself. And then with all of this, the banner height minus all of this. So basically I'm saying that, I'm going to start at down here, and I'm going to move up as many lines as I have, however tall they are. And then I also need to make sure I divide whatever's left by 2. So like if I'm down here and I move up this far, well, I want the text to be centered, not just focused down here in the bottom. So I move up half the way up. So this is going to all be divided by 2.0. And I think that's, put that in the wrong spot. So the X and the Y are calculated, but it's like, it's a weird, if you just threw these numbers in there, you might not know what it is. So this is the type of thing where having some helper functions that make it clear what you're actually doing, like calculate, insert this multicell here centered, and you tell it like the width and the height and where you want it to be centered at. You could actually get a lot of this and sort of hide it inside of a function that, makes it clear that it's centering it vertically, and, it's something like that. So let's go ahead and run this. And that puts our text right here, about where we wanted it to be. And I'm not actually worrying about it lining up with any lines or anything now, because I'm just going to do the same thing all over again. Copy this. This is going to be phone, email, domain. And this is going to be banner. And this is going to be banner address. So again, the font's Arial. All of this is going to be the same except for the X. We don't want to do 2.0. We just want to do 124. Just one of them. And then the same for the banner height here. We're going to do the same spot. And I'm going to make sure I just move to make sure it gets to the right spot. And then for this, I want like 123 Fake Street. Second line is going to be like some town, PA. And then the third line is going to be zip code or postal code. So let's do 12345. And you could even do something like USA here. So let's run this and see if it's working correct. See, this is getting really big, so I don't want that USA part. I could do it, but I just don't think I need it. All right, so this all seems to line up. Let's go ahead and get rid of the grid and see what we got. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. You can see that this seems to line up pretty decently with these, so I think it's fine to leave as is. And that's, you could actually take the top left of this and like the top of this and try to make it line up with the tops of these if you wanted. So this is where this invoice part, I actually think figuring this part out first was harder. We should have started with the right to get the information and then figured out where the invoice looked good. But we've got the top invoice banner. I'm going to go ahead and stop this video for now. In the next one, we're going to go ahead and try to do the like address information and that sort of stuff. So it's going to be this stuff here, right around here. And we're just going to hard code a value in for the total right now. And then the next video, we'll do this section here. And we'll actually calculate these numbers dynamically, and then we'll slap that in there. But yeah, that's it for the banner. Okay, so we created the top portion of our PDF. What we're going to be doing in this video is trying to fill in this section here. The things that sort of show, the information about who the invoice is for, the invoice number, that sort of stuff. So if I go to the invoice.jpg, you'll see here that, it's this section here, this top part, where we're looking at the total, the invoice number, the date of issue, the build to, and probably this line here. We'll try to get all of that, and then we'll go ahead and do the rest. And maybe this line doesn't make sense as far as, well, I don't know which part I'd consider that part of, but we're probably going to cover it in this just because it's nice and easy to do. So to do this, we're going to come down here below all of this stuff, and we're going to basically just focus on how to write this text, and we're just going to get one section. We're going to work on just the build to, and then once we have that, we're going to come back and see, can we generalize this just a little bit to make it easier to sort of build the rest of these, or at least these two. Maybe not the invoice total part. So I'm going to turn on the grid. I'm going to go run main.go, and I'm going to actually rename this to be p3.pdf. Open p3.pdf. So we got the grid up. I think a good starting point's probably somewhere around here at 122. So we want to, give me a second, I gotta make sure my notes are at the right spot. There we go. So I want to make sure that we can write at that spot. So I'm going to say x comma y are going to be x indent. So this x indent is going to be, it's something we defined up here. It's 40 right now. It's going to be like roughly how far in we come for our text. And then we're going to do y is going to be the 122.0 that we mentioned before. And the reason I say 122.0 is, I think right here is a pretty good starting point. I'm just sort of picking it arbitrarily, though. I'm just looking at my grid and seeing, like, I think that's enough padding there to work with. You could always do something like banner height plus, choose something to use here. For instance, we could decide we're going to be doing pdf.setFont. It's going to be times, not bold or anything, and maybe we're going to use font size 14. And then we could say line height is going to be pdf.getFontSize. And then here we could just do line height times 2, something like this. Maybe it's times 3.0 is what we want to do. So it's going to be banner height plus line height. I don't want banner T height, I want banner height. All right, so now we got that. And now we can just do something like, let me go ahead and just put this up here, pdf.setTextColor. I'm going to do 180, 180, 180. I want like a light gray. If you recall from this invoice, this is like a light gray here for the headers, because it's, you know, it's useful to have the headers, but it's not the primary information we're trying to convey. And I should warn you, I'm not like a great designer or anything. I'm just going on like some basic guesses as to what might make sense to emphasize versus what not to emphasize. So finally, with all this, we could do pdf.text, xy, build 2. And now we can run this. And I've got something here that's wrong. 65. Apparently something went wrong when it was building this. I'm not sure. Oh, I want times, not time. And I'm going to close this. I'm not sure why I have 2 open. All right, so we got build 2 written right here. That seems about, seems about fine. It's around where we expect it to be anyway. Maybe we want this to be like a 2.5, something like that. Somewhere in that ballpark. Did we get an error? No, we didn't. Okay. So I think that's a good starting point. So from here, we want to go ahead and we want to draw the rest of this data. So all the data that comes under it. So we'll do something like pdf.set text color. Maybe we'll do 50, 50, 50. So it's like it's almost a black, but it's dark. And then we're going to go ahead and we want to move down. We don't want to be writing on top of the text we have. So we're going to say y equals y plus line height times 1.5. So we're doing like, 1.5 times spacing for the line height. I think that's a reasonable spacing. And then we're going to do pdf.text. Here we could do x, y, and then we can just do client name and go run this. And we've got client name here, and that should be fine. Now we could do something like multicell here, because we're going to be doing a couple different lines here. So let me go ahead and just copy these 2. We're going to do a line height goes down. This time I'm not going by 1.5. I'm going to do by 1.25, I think, because I want this information to be a little bit closer together. And here we might have 123 client address. And then we'll do 2 more, I think. This will be city, state, country, and this one's going to be postal code. All right, so that looks about right. Everything's fine there. And you'll see here these are a little bit closer together compared to the build 2, so I have a little bit more of a gap. That's why I did 1.5 there and 1.25 here. So I think this all works. For these lines here, you could use something like multicell. There's basically 2 reasons why I'm not using it. One, with multicell, it ends up being indented a little bit different. We'll see it at some point, I think. But basically, multicell, you'd be in like 2 more pixels or something, because text just sort of defines the bottom left. Multicell is going to define the top left, I think, and you have to like actually do pdf.move to xy, and you have to make sure you're at the right spot, and then you do pdf.multicell. I'll see if I can do it real quick. We'll do 125 as the width, maybe. It's probably 124 is fine as well, because that's what we used up here. The height here is going to be line height times 1.25, the same as we're using for all 3 of these lines. The text string could be client name, new line. Then we could have 123 client address, new line, city, state, country, new line, and postal code. And then for border, we're going to do gof pdf.border none, align string gof pdf.align left, I think is what we're doing. And then fill is just going to be false. So let's go ahead and comment these all out. Let me get this. I do want to keep this one. So we're going to do y equals y plus this. We're going to move, then we're going to multicell. All right, so you see here that it's similar, but not exactly the same. You end up having to move the y around a little bit more to make this work and stuff. And it's not that this is bad. The reason I'm going to actually opt to not do this is that with this, we don't really know how tall this ends up being. Now we can calculate that. We can do something like pdf.split lines, and we can pass in this text and the width that we're using, the 124, and it'll actually calculate what, what we end up being height-wise, or it'll actually, this will return a 2D slice, And that basically the length of that slice will be how many lines we had, and then we can multiply that by this line height to determine how many lines there were. So it'd be something like data, or lines is going to be this, and we get to length of lines times line height times 1.25, and this is going to tell us about how tall this whole block ends up being, this multi-cell block is. But rather than doing all that, I personally just found it easier to do this and just to just go through every single line. Now the one downside to this is that these text blocks won't word wrap. Those keep going to the right. So it's something you'll need to keep in mind, that as you design your invoice, it's possible that this text is going to scroll to the right and maybe overwrite something. So maybe you'll need to check some really long strings, or the longest ones you expect to actually support, or maybe you'd want to add some support here that says if it's over a certain number of characters. And if you really wanted, you could even do something like Courier font, and then we could run this, and you'll see that this is a fixed width font. And with this, it's fixed width fonts, in my opinion, normally don't look as good for this type of document, but you could, since it's fixed width, you could actually figure out, all right, the most characters we accept in a single row is maybe 20, because maybe that's at this line or something. So at that point, we can decide, okay, we need to split our lines manually every 20 characters or something. So, there's a lot of different approaches you can take for this. I'm just going to go ahead and just do it like this because I'm not super worried about it. I think I'm going to give it enough spacing that for most use cases, it's not going to be a real issue. Okay, so we've got all of this. I'm actually going to copy this all now, and I'm going to make a function, and it's going to be a summary block is what I'm going to call it. And it's going to return an x and a y, which are integers, or actually they're going to be floats, 64s. I'm going to paste all this in here, and at the very end, I'm going to do trying to decide. I think this y here at the very end is fine. We don't need to actually go down from here. So we can return x comma y. And we're going to look and figure out what things we need here. So we need the PDF. I need an FPDF, and this is actually going to be a pointer. And then do we need anything else? We're going to need the line, well, the line height we can get here, so I can just put that there. We're going to need X indent, banner height, and line height. Banner height's here, X indent's here. They're both constants, and they're global for this package, so we're fine there. This is saying no new variables because X and Y are declared in the return. And then I think that's everything. Okay, so we're going to need this information like the title and then every single line. So I'm going to say title, string, and then we're going to say data. It's going to be a variadic parameter of strings. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say pdf.text. So we have X and Y here. My guess is that for these two, we probably want to pass them in. So what we'll probably do is something like x, y, int. Something like this. And this needs to be float64, sorry. And this is like an oddity. I actually want to be returning these variables. So it's a little bit weird here. I'm just going to go ahead and do the simple way and just do float64, and not use named return variables. Because I think it's pretty clear what we're returning anyway. So we're going to do text. This is actually not going to happen. I'm going to comment that out. Text is going to be x, y. And do I need to add any? So X and Y are going to define the top left corner of whatever we're writing. So my guess is that what we want to do is we want to add line height to that. So what I'm probably going to want to do is say y equals y plus line height. And that's because I want to go down enough to actually write the line. And then I'm going to do pdf.text, x, y, title. Then I'm going to say y equals y plus line height times 1.5. And this is supposed to be a plus here. And then we're going to say for each string in the range of data. And then in here, we're going to say pdf.text and whatever that string is. And then we're going to increment y. And this is going to end up meaning that our y is going to end up being lower than the actual line of the next one, but I think that's fine. We can just do y equals y minus line height times 1.25. And we might actually need to, Well, there's an easier way to do this. We can do times 0.25 here, move this to the top, and then it's only going to happen at the start of every single line. So that should be fine. And then we can get rid of all of this, and we can return x and y at the end. So if I did this correctly, this function should allow us to just pass in an x and a y for the top left corner, a title, and separate lines for all the data we actually want to put in, and it should format it exactly the same, and then return the new x and the y wherever we end up at the very end of it. So I'm going to come up here, and I want to make sure this code works. So first we're going to run this, open it. All right, there's the document. That's what it looks like. Now I'm going to comment this all out, and I'm going to do summary block, PDF. Our x and y are going to be these two here, except this is going to be slightly wrong. We know that this is going to add a little bit of this for us. It's going to add line height for us. So I only need to be times 1.5 here. So summary block times, or banner height plus line height times 1.5. And then we're going to do title is going to be build to. And then the rest of the data is going to be client name, 123 client address, city, state, country, and then postal code. Right, so now let's go ahead and see how this works. And I'm not going to actually grab the x and the y from this right now. I could, but I don't need that right this second. So, all right, so it's almost right. It looks very similar. It's not quite exactly the same, but that's fine. So we do the font size. The color is what we're missing here. So now we're going to do this is going to be 50, 50, 50. And it's not quite exactly at the same spot. I'm not sure, why exactly that is the case, but it's still generating this all roughly the same, so I think that's fine. I think I can just sort of give it a spot like this and let it work. It is lined up with the invoice word, so I think we're good here. I think that all makes sense. And what's nice about this, having it as a function now, is that now I can just do something like invoice number, and then the data for this can be something like this, and I can say this is going to be at x indent plus x indent times 2.0, so we have two indents, and then we're going to assume that this first line we're going to give it about 125 points or whatever a unit is, and this right here is sort of a constant. Maybe it would make more sense to do something like line height times, base it off the font size of some sort. Maybe we want to do the point size. I don't really know. I'm just going to do line height because I think that's a reasonable estimate for like the font size. And maybe I'll do like times 5.0. And I need to see what is the line height. All right, line height is 12. So our font is 12 and it's setting the line height to 12. I want this to be around 125, maybe. So 125 divided by 12 is going to be about 10.4. So maybe we'll do times 11 here, or 10.5. And that should give us a ballpark. I think that's a reasonable spacing. Maybe we'll just make it 11. I still think it can be more. Sorry. All right, and the reason I'm mostly doing that is that now I can come up here and change this font size, and this should... it should adjust itself a little bit to sort of tweak with it. Now, granted, not all font sizes are just going to work, so we have to be a little bit careful. But I think it's a reasonable, goal to try to make it, sort of work. And maybe I'm going to do 12.5 here. Okay, so now that I have this, I can grab this whole thing and do the second part is going to be. So I've got line height times 2.0. I know that this right here is going to end up being line height tall. And then we're going to have a 1.5 spacing between that. So we've got 2.5 line heights. And then this is going to be another line height. So maybe 3.5 line heights. And then we probably want to add a spacing of maybe 1.5 in between there. So, maybe we're looking at line height. What did I say? This was 1, 2, plus 1.5. So that's 3.5. So maybe we want like a 5. So 2.0 plus 5 is going to be 7.0, sorry. And this is going to be something like date of issue. And honestly for this, this is the type of thing that you could just actually plug numbers in and just experiment and see how it works. So, you know, I'm spending time trying to do math, but realistically I could just plug numbers in and see what I think looks good. And I think that's a little bit too much. So let's try 6. And that's a little bit better. I think that's about where I want this to be. Maybe we'll do 6.5. There we go. Still not a huge fan. I'm not sure why we're like a little bit off. 6.25 perhaps. There we go. I want this line to sort of line up with the bottom of that line is what I was going for. And I do realize that these are inside here we're on 1.25s. So maybe that's something I wasn't thinking about. So I think this looks pretty decent. And because we created the summary block, we now have a pretty easy way to go about doing this. But on top of that, we could also say, you know, y, you know, sy is what we're going to call it. And then we could do sy here. So in our code, sy is 205.5. So we know that around the bottom of this is somewhere at like 205.5. And the reason that's important is, let's say we end up passing in an extra line here. You know, whenever we draw a line down here for our, you know, blocking off our invoice or, you know, actual line items, knowing how tall this is could be useful, so we could actually know where to put that line, so that we, you know, if we always put the line at 244, for instance, if this ends up having 2 extra lines, then that might overflow. So you can use things like that to sort of keep track of where we are in the whole document. And you can also use that when you create your line items to figure out if you're getting close to the end of the page and you need to start a new page or something like that. So even if you're not utilizing all the stuff in the GoF PDF package to sort of keep track of pages for you, you can still do that yourself. So I think that's everything here. I do need one more thing. I need a right-hand side invoice total section. So I'm going to go ahead and say PDF dot, let's say XY equals, I do have X and Y defined, don't I? No, I don't anymore. Okay. So X and Y are going to be equal to, and I don't need these anymore, so I'm going to delete them. I'm going to delete all of this. Yeah, I'm going to delete it. So X and Y are going to become equal to, so I want the same line height we started with up here. So this right here is going to be our 2, or our Y. So I'm going to do 0.0 this, and then I'm going to figure out what is the X. So the X, I'm going to do right aligned text. So over here, I'm going to basically try to figure out this spot here and do right aligned text right here at the same spot as these. So I know that my Y needs to be the width, or my X needs to be the width of the document minus the X indent. But then I also have to subtract, you know, whenever we add a cell block or something, we start at the left-hand side of that cell block. So I need to subtract however big I expect this cell block to be. So I'm just going to subtract 124.0 for the time being and just say it's going to be 124 units wide, which I think is a reasonable number. We've used it a couple times up here. So, like we used it here for this right here, part 2. I think that's fine. So now I'm going to go ahead and just say pdf.move to XY, and then I'm going to say pdf.set text color. This is 180, 180, 180. And here I can say summary, build to invoice number and date of issue. And this is going to be summary invoice total. So our text color is going to be set here. And then we're going to go ahead and do PDF dot. So we've got multicell, which allows you to do multiple lines. We've got cell, which is just sort of you put a cell of text. There's also cell format, which is the same as cell, except you get a little bit more customization. You can, you know, customize exactly like the alignment and stuff like that. So it's not quite the same as multicell in the sense that it's not going to break up the lines for you, but it is what I'm going to go ahead and use here. So 124.0 is going to be my width. That's what I set up here. And, you know, I could have made that a variable. Probably would have made more sense, but I'm just going to leave it hard-coded for now. The height is going to be line height. And it might make sense here to go ahead and make sure I set the font just to make sure it's accurate. So I'm going to go here and do this and font size. And the reason I'm doing a lot of these over and over again is that I don't really know if I'm going to come back and put some code in here at some spot. These summary blocks, that's why I make sure they do all the stuff they kind of need to do up front on their own. You never know when somebody's going to slap some extra code in there, so it might be worth trying to keep all of that stuff repeated, even though it seems repetitive. All right, so line height's what we're doing here, or maybe, yeah, line height's fine. This is text is going to be invoice total. And then here, the border, gofpdf.border none. ln, I think this is line break or something. I think this has something to do with where the cursor goes. So this move to, once you write a cell, it'll actually move wherever you are in the document based on that. And you can tell it to like go to the new line, go to the end of that thing on the right-hand side of it. There's some different things you can tell it here, but I don't really care. So I'm going to do line break none. It's not going to make a difference because I'm always using move to. And then the align string, gofpdf.align right. Fill is going to be false. I think, again, this has something to do with the cursor, but I'm not sure. Then link and link string are just, if you want this text to link to something, you give it the index of the link that you added to the PDF and then the text for the link, but I'm not going to be doing any of that. Okay, so let's see how that worked. It's up here all the way, so that's not right. The Y is incorrect. So banner height minus line, I wanted plus line height. How did I manage to get that wrong? Oh, that's this part up here. I wanted this part here. That's why. I grabbed the wrong thing. All right, so that looks like it's lined up with all of these, except it's a little bit up. It's a little bit higher. And I think this is just a byproduct of using cell format instead of text. This is one of the things that kind of annoyed me, was that the two, and I'm not trying to like blame the author of this package or anything. It's just the two of them don't quite line up exactly the same every time. So it can be very frustrating to try to get that perfect. So here I'm just going to tweak. It looks like 2.25 gets me in the same realm as all of them. So I think that looks good. They're all like basically the tops of the T's are barely touching that line. And then below that, we're going to go ahead and say y equals, how much do I want here? Let's say y plus line height times 1.5 perhaps. I think that's what we mostly used on all the others. Then we're going to do pdf.set font size times empty string and 48. We're going to make this a really big font. We're going to do pdf.set text color, and I'm just going to copy some code here. This color is, I could have just figured out all these numbers on my own, just adding them. Originally, I was tweaking with the alpha because then I could sort of mess with the coloring, whether or not it was exactly the same as this or it was a little bit lighter, and I'll show you that here in a second. So that's why I had the alpha here, so I could sort of tweak with that a little bit easier. And it's not like an actual exact alpha calculation, but it's like a rough estimate for me. And then, what else did I want? What is this complaining about? Is this set font is what it's supposed to be, not font size. Okay, and then I need to have total USD is going to be 1234.50. And finally, I need to make sure I move down line height, because I'm going to do pdf.text, and I'm going to do XY, and then total USD. But actually, I don't want to do XY. I want to do cell format right. So I'm going to do pdf.cell format. And this is going to be the same as this, basically, so I'm going to go ahead and grab it. I am going to need to get the new line height, because I'm going to use that line height down here, so I want to make sure that's right. This is going to become total USD. I think that's everything. Yeah, let's go ahead and try this. Ugh, that didn't work. So what happened? I don't know if this needs to be bigger. I don't think that's the case. Oh, I bet I know what happened. After this pdf.cell format, we never moved. Like, we never did pdf.move to. And it moved the cursor for us, like I had mentioned. So there we go. That'll actually get us the cursor correctly. And the one thing I notice here is that these two, they're both technically aligned to the right correctly, but it looks almost like this isn't quite there. So one of the things that I'll sometimes do here is I'll, maybe add 2.0 or something to the x. So we could do something like x comma y is going to be x plus 2.0, the y. And now it's moved over a little bit more, but I think those two look like they're lined up a little bit better. Let's try just some different numbers and see what they look like. Yeah, I still think those just look like they're lined up better. I mean, the one still looks like a little bit of a gap, but it's going to have to do. Let's do 1, 2, 3, 4.56. Yeah, I think those all look good. Okay, so I'm going to leave this 2.0 there. And then we could always, once we write this, we could say x equals x minus 2.0. We can do xy equals x minus 2.0, y plus line height times 1.25 maybe. Even we're not going to end up using this, but that's fine. So this right here gets us that invoice total section. So now what we might want to do is get the max of all of our y's. So we could do sy. And then down here we have this y, and we want to say if sy is greater than y, y equals sy. And then what we're going to do is add a rectangle here. And I want to do x is going to be equal to, what is it that I end up using? I think it's like x indent minus 20 or something. And I'll explain why here in a second. I just got to find the reference code. There we go. So x is going to be x indent minus 20.0. And the reason I'm doing this is we're about to draw a rectangle. So we're going to do pdf.rect. And we're going to do x, y. The width is going to be the entire width of the screen minus x indent times 2.0. So we're going to have indents on both sides that it's not going to cover. But then we want it to go over each indent by 20 pixels. So we're going to add 40.0. And then the height is going to be something like 3 point units. And then the style is going to be fill. And I'm doing rectangle instead of line here because I want it a little bit thicker than a line typically is with this PDF package. So a rectangle allows me to set that height of 3, which gives it a little bit thicker line. All right, so this 20 and this 40 are the two that are linked. Basically, this is going to be 2 times whatever I'm subtracting here. And that's because if we're starting at 30 and we're going to 550 or 581, basically we have the x indents that come off of both sides. And if I want it to stick out on each side, I need to subtract enough on each side to make sure that the width is fine. So I could actually show you if I don't do this and I run this, and the y is going to be wrong. See how it sticks real far off to the right, but it doesn't stick off to the left. So basically by subtracting 20, I'm centering this. So now that's centered, but we got to get the y correct. So we're going to say x comma y is going to be this, and y is going to be plus, let's just say 30.0. I think that's a reasonable spacing. And now if we were to add different things to this build to part, like let me go ahead and just add extra line. You'll see that our line gets moved down and takes that into account. So, that was the whole point of adding this y stuff here and trying to keep track of it, is that now that we have something reasonable here to sort of work with, that's going to try to keep that into account. Okay, so I think we're fine there. I'm sure this isn't perfect, but that's a good, rough version of what we're building here for the top part. And what we're going to work on next is these line items down below. But let me show you what this looks like without the grid, because I think that it's nice to see what we're actually building here without that grid every so often. So let me shrink this a little bit. So this is our full invoice so far. I'd zoom in more, but then you can't see the whole page, so that's why I'm trying to keep it this size. But, it's looking pretty decent. We definitely need to get these line items here, and they're going to be not incredibly hard, but they're one of the sections that, you could overflow more easily. So we're not actually going to cover making this support multiple pages, but that is something that you might want to consider if you were doing this yourself. And there are some things in the PDF package like footers and stuff like that support that you could actually add to create page numbers and stuff like that. Okay, so that's it for this video. In the next one, we'll do the table, and we should be pretty much done with this invoice. So I just recorded this whole video, and the file got corrupted somehow, so I've got to record it again. What we're trying to do here is create this line item section. And I'm going to try to like replicate all the stuff I did in the last video, sort of explaining things thoroughly. Hopefully I won't go too quickly since I've just coded this once. Just to give you a rough idea of how I plan on doing this, I'm probably going to do the headers first, and I'm going to try to do them in the same way that I'm going to do each line item. So this right here is probably going to be a cell or a multi-cell, because I know I'm going to want multi-cells for these parts because I need some way to do word wrapping like you see here. Here, we're probably going to do a cell with a right align, so we can do cells with right aligns for all these numbers, so I don't have to worry about aligning them to the right myself. Same thing with quantity. I'm probably going to try to keep a cell that's about the size of this and do right align text so that I can do right align for all these, and same with amount. And then I'm going to try to show borders to sort of see how all of those align together. And then that'll be the headers. So then down here for the line items, I'll basically take all the code for the headers. I'll use it to write these 4 parts of the line. And then I'll also calculate the y-axis. Basically, I'll figure out how many lines we're using the split lines function. And we're going to try to figure out how much y distance is used by this multi-cell here. And then we'll use that at the very end of our code in order to figure out what our new y is. So basically, we'll figure out how many lines were used here. We'll add a little bit to it. We'll draw a line, and then we'll return that new y so that every time we add a line item, we'll tell it add it here at this x and y. It'll return the new x and y that's down here at the very bottom. So we can just keep on adding these over and over again, and it'll just make that process very, very easy. It'll also make it easy to figure out when you need new pages, because as we come down here, at some point, maybe around this y, you'll realize we need a new page. So, at some y, some y on your page, you would decide, okay, new page time, generate the new page, do all that stuff. We're not going to do new pages in this video, but that's roughly how I would go about doing it. Okay, so I had to pause the video there, make sure I wasn't working with a corrupt file again, make sure I have everything going. Let's go ahead and get started with the code. I originally did this in a branch called P4, so let me go ahead and just create a new branch for that. So I have a copy of it. Git checkout P3, git b-d P4, git checkout-b P4. And let me zoom this in a little bit. And split this pane so that you don't have to worry about things falling off the screen. That should give us a rough starting point. And now we can go back to our code. This thing zooms in every time, it's annoying. So in our code, there's a couple things we're going to be doing here. So first, we're just going to, let me get my notes up here. All right, so first we just kind of need to move down a little bit from where our rectangle is. So we're going to do something like, well, let's just set the font size first. So pdf.setFont, we'll do times, we'll do no styling, and then for the size, let's do size 14 font. Then we're going to do line height. It's going to be get font size. And now we're going to go ahead and set the text color. And we're going to want 180 across the board for our text color for our headers, because we're doing these headers here and we want them to be a light gray. This amount was a fluke. It's supposed to be light gray as well. And then what we want to do is we want to set the x and the y. And x is going to become x indent minus 2.0. And this 2.0 is the same that we were using up here. We set, I think it's the same one we used here, or the same reasoning for up here. But I don't remember actually. I don't remember why we did plus. I'll have to look at it later. Oh, I think that was a different one, that 2.0. Do I have like another? Basically, the reason I'm using it is because whenever we go to, I have it right here. I don't know if that's the same reason why though. Basically, the indent with cell versus using pdf.text is a little bit different. So the same position for both of those will actually end up with text at a little bit different spots. And I know that we're going to be using the cell and the multi-cell stuff, so I'm going to go ahead and just do minus 2.0. And then our y is going to be y plus line height times 1.5. So we're going to do 1.5 spacing from wherever this rectangle was. And then we're going to subtract line height divided by 1.25. And I know that seems really weird. I could probably just go ahead and fix this. It ends up being this because later on in the code I ended up turning all this stuff into a function, I think. Actually, I know why. In the original video, I started with pdf.text and then I eventually migrated to something else, and this is the code that I ended up with. So we can just change this. This can just be 0.25, something like that. Or that's probably not right, but I don't care. So we'll just start line height, and we'll just go from there. I can always tweak these values. I don't do math well on screen under pressure. So we're going to move to XY, and then we're going to pdf.cell format. And we can just sort of copy what we have up here for one of these, and we'll come down here and tweak it. You know, there's all these different options for this that I don't want to mess with all of them. So our width is going to be, I want something like maybe close to 1/3 of the screen, but maybe not exactly that. So I tweaked this a lot off screen, and I'm going to actually show you this border full so you can see it. I tweaked this a good bit off screen so that you don't have to mess with this. I basically decided on W divided by 2.65 plus 1.0, and I could have just figured out a constant number and put it in there. That would have been fine too, but this is the one based on the white width we're using. Line height, and then this string is going to be description, and the rest of this stays the same. And let me go ahead and just run this now so you can go run main.go and open p4.pdf. I got to make sure I actually name this P4. And this is right align, which we're going to need to fix. Align left. Okay, so the reason I want this box to be roughly this big is it's not quite halfway, but it's big enough that if we have like a fairly long line item description, it should fit in this box pretty reasonably. And then we're going to go ahead and start adding all these other spots that we have. So we're going to say x equals x plus w divided by 2.25 minus x indent. And I know that seems weird. I'm basically saying our x-axis plus some variable that's based off this width. And I don't remember how I came to this. Again, it was just sort of messing around with numbers off screen. But let me go ahead and I need to do a pdf.cell format. And pdf.move to. So if you're doing this yourself, what I really suggest doing is just sort of messing around and figuring out which, values work for you, because chances are these don't need to be that dynamic. We're not going to be updating this PDF that often. We're going to probably pick one page size, use it all the time. So I don't think it's really worth getting all these making them all dynamic so that they can fluctuate with font sizes and stuff. I just don't expect to be changing them very often. Where I'll care a little bit more about dynamics is when we come to line items, because those are, coming from dynamic data, but these headers just aren't, so I don't care that much. And I need this to be aligned right. So basically, if you look at this, if I could probably add maybe 2 or 3 to this. Let's see. 3 was too much. So let's add 2. That looks like too much still. If I add nothing to it, yeah, they're still pretty close. So I think I basically decided on this because those two end up being about the same, but I'm not even sure if that's right. It might be -1 here. And this is why I'm not doing this on the screen that much. Watching me do this is pretty boring. I wanted that to be plus, not. So I think that's close enough. I don't want to go too far. But basically, I'm just trying to figure out widths here that align these all so they're touching each other mostly, but they're not exactly the same. And even this is wrong. Something here is wrong. At least it looks to be wrong. Oh, the width here is supposed to be 100. Because I want this to be pretty close. Price per unit's not going to be super large. I don't expect to be doing invoices with numbers that are going to be more than maybe, maybe maybe $100, at least in this example. So I know that this doesn't have to be too wide. Now, if you're working with something where you're selling items that cost $1 million each unit, maybe you need to sort of tweak this and make it reflect that. Or maybe you need to just, show your numbers a little bit different. Maybe it's price per unit in millions. Who knows? That's kind of up to you to figure out what makes sense there. All right, so next we need to make this next part. So we're going to say x equals, this is going to be just x plus 100.0. And that's basically, I'm saying the width of this cell, I want to move right exactly whatever that width was. And that's really what I probably should have been doing here. So I probably could have just done that. Let me see how that works. Yeah, that worked perfectly. I don't know why I didn't do that from the start. So we're going to add 100 here. So for all these, we're just moving whatever the width of the previous cell was. I'm not really sure why I didn't do that the first time. So we're going to move to X, Y, and again, we're going to copy this whole line, paste it down here, and this is going to be quantity. And for quantity, I'm going to change this to be a width of 80 because I don't think we're going to have even that many digits for that because it's not a currency or a dollar amount, so we don't need a decimal point in these. And then finally, we're going to do one more, x equals, so for this one, we could do x equals, how do I put this? We could go ahead and do this whole x equals x plus 80, and that would work. The reason I'm going to choose not to do that is I want to make sure this one's right aligned with the right indent. So I'm actually going to calculate this and say it's w minus x indent minus 2.0. And then I'm going to have to subtract whatever the width of this column is, whatever the width of this cell is. So let's say it's 110.0. I actually know what the final value is. It's 120, but this is fine. So you can pdf.move to xy, pdf.cell format, and I'm going to copy all this, paste it in here again. This is going to be amount, and this is going to be 110. So we'll run this, and you'll see here there's a gap. Well, the way we're going to fill this gap is we're going to take both these 110s, we're going to make them 120, and see, is it mostly filled? Well, maybe we need it to be 121. And that looks like it's too much, so let's do 119. And we could even calculate this dynamically. We could say that x is supposed to be, x plus 180. And we want the, so this is like the far left-hand side. And then we want the width to be that plus whatever x minus x indent minus 2.0 is. So we could say this minus this should be our width. So I can just copy all of this, put it right here, and then I can say that's the case for this. So we could just say x plus 80 here. Let's see if that worked. Nope, I did my math completely wrong. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and stop trying to be smart about this. And just go ahead and just make it 119. Maybe I want 118. I don't really remember. Well, 118 seems to be too much. So let's try 119.5 and then hopefully be done with it. All right, I think that's close enough. It's on that line at least, so we should be good. And I don't really expect these amounts to overflow that much anyway. I'm just trying to make sure these cells are all roughly aligned. So now that we have that, the next thing we want to do is find a way to create our line items. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a function that does this. And it's going to take in, well, let me just show you the this version first, and then we'll go to the function. So we're going to say that once we've done all these x's, we need to come all the way back to wherever we started out. So something like this. So x is going to go all the way back to the left. And we're going to add something like line height to our y so that we're down below these lines that we just wrote. And we should probably do something like line height times 1.5 or something, but I'll just go ahead and leave it at this. So from here, what we want to do is we want to say same font size, just to make sure we have it. We want to make sure the line height's exactly the same, just in case it was changed. We're going to change the text color, and this is going to become 50-50-50 because we want a darker color for this data because it's important. We want it to stand out. And then we're going to go ahead and say that for each of these, we're going to go ahead and do pdf.move to x and y. And then we're going to print out these cells exactly like we did here. So we can come down through all of these. And I'm just going to copy all of this, including the X move. That might be wrong, but that's fine. I'll just get rid of that one. And this is going to be some description. This is going to be, we'll just do 10.00. Quantity is going to be 123, and amount's going to be 1230.0. I need 2 zeros here. So we can go run this, and you'll see here that we've got this line. Now I want it spaced a little bit more than that. So I'm going to come up here and say, maybe I want to do y equals y plus line height again. That's maybe a little bit too much. So we'll do something like that. And then down below it, we want to also do y equals y plus line height times 0.5 to give it some space as well. And then I want to draw a line, so I'm going to do something like pdf.set draw color. We want this to be that light gray, so 180s. We'll do pdf.line, and we want this to be something like x indent y, and this is going to be w minus x indent, and this will be y again. So let's go ahead and just see what that looks like. Well, that line's completely wrong. The reasoning for that is that our y is currently at the top left of this, so we want to come down line height, and then we want to add an extra half line height to that at least. All right, so there we have that line now. Now I want this to be a little bit wider, so I'm going to do minus 10, and then over here I'm going to say plus 10. All right, so that made the line stick out a little bit farther on both sides. And then with all this, we could just copy all this code all over again and do it several times. If I take it all and paste it in here again and run it, we've got our line heights, it's adding a little bit too much for some reason. So maybe we need to figure that out. Maybe we don't want this part here, this line height part. So knowing that, maybe we want this to be copy pastable. So we'll come up here and we'll say that this is plus line height. So we'll do y equals y plus line height. And then this part here will come down here. So we can actually just copy all of this, delete this original, or this second copy. So we just have that first line I'm going to show you. First line, I copied all that code. I'm going to paste it in here again. I'm going to run it. And we have a second line, and it looks like it's spacing them out pretty decently. You'll see here now that I updated the draw color, my borders are a different color, but that's fine. So we have this mostly working. What I want to do is I want to turn this into a function call. So all of this needs to become a function call. And now that I have it as, repeatable, copy pastable code, that makes it much, much easier to do. I can say function. I know I'm going to need a PDF. Go fpdf.fpdf. And I'm going to need an x and a y to put this at, which are going to be float 64s. And I'm going to need a line item of some sort, but we'll define that here in a minute. And it's going to return a new x and y. And I want to return the original x, so I'm going to say orig x is going to be x. And then I'm going to increment that as we go down through here, but I don't want to actually change that. So I'm going to return the original x, so wherever we start on the left-hand side, because I think that makes sense for line items. And because we go to a new line and then we move to the left again, and I return the y. And then I have to come through here and figure out which one of these, where do I have errors with this code. So line height isn't defined, so I can add that. We don't have width, so we can say w is going to be pdf.get page size. And is there anything else we're missing? Nope, doesn't look like it. So we have all that. Now we can just come up here, replace all of this with line item, PDF, x, y, and we can say x, y equals PDF, and we can just do this a couple times. And that should actually keep track of keep our x and y updated. So now we keep adding multiple lines. So what I want to do after that is I want to actually use data. So I have this data that was in the README. I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to tweak this just a little bit. I wonder if I actually have this in my notes. I didn't save it. Okay, that's fine. So what I'm going to go ahead and do here is I'm going to come up to the top, and I'm going to paste this in first to do a type. So I'm going to do type line item just to make my life easier. And it's going to be a struct that has these things in it. So now I'm going to come down here and copy all this, and I'm going to say data is going to, or we'll say line items, is going to be a slice of line items. We'll paste this all in, and I don't need that. I don't need this part. Okay, So it's declared we're not using it. That's what it's complaining about. Before I go use it, we can use this. This is fine. So now we'll come down here and we'll say that for this, we're also going to pass in a line item, which is a line item. And we'll pass in line. We'll make this for each li in the range of line items. xy equals line item pdf xy li. So that should get all of our line items. And then down here in our line items, we want to make sure we use these. So this is going to become line item dot unit name. This, we need some way to convert, all of our line items have the money parts in cents. So we need to do some way to convert that. Let's just go ahead and make that a function because we know we're going to call that a lot. It's going to take in cents integer and it's going to return a string. And roughly what this is going to look like is, all right, so first we'll get the cents part. So we're going to say cents string is going to be sprintf %d, and we're going to pass in cents %100. But this could end up being 0 or something below 10, so we want to make sure this is 2 digits all the time. And what I'm just going to do is the simple if the length of cents string is less than 2, then we're going to say cents string is equal to cents or 0 plus cents string. So I think it's just a quick and obvious way to do this. I want this to be plus. Then we're going to return sprintf of %d dot %s, and we'll put a $sign in the front because this is USD. And we'll do cents divided by 100 and cents string. All right, so now we got the 2 USD. Now we're going to come here and say 2 USD line item dot price per unit. And then down here for quantity, I'm going to put line item dot units purchased. And then finally, I'm going to put 2 USD line item dot price per unit times line item dot units purchased and pass that into the 2 USD function call. And this is an integer, so I need to do something. I think this is the simplest way. So we'll run this. And now we have all real numbers here, and our amounts are even being calculated. So from there, I think we've got this working pretty decent. So I'm actually going to find all these border fulls, and I'm going to make them border none. And this is another reason why I like using these variables instead of just hard coding strings, is if I were to copy paste on the strings, it could be a little bit trickier to get the correct select alls when I do multi-select. Whereas here, this is, it's a string that's probably not used a lot anywhere else. Or, sorry, it's a variable. So that name border none is unique enough that we can just select them all and edit them all at the same time. Okay, so this is what our code is looking like. Quantity, I'm not sure if it looks perfectly aligned, but it should be fine. We could add a little bit more spacing if we wanted. For instance, maybe what we want to do inside of here is say we want to do line height times 0.75. And then at the end, we're going to do 1.75. All right, that gives it a little bit more spacing. I think I like that better. And we've got most of this working. We now know our new y's and x's whenever we do this. The big thing that I want to do now is I want to put our subtotals and all that stuff at the bottom, but I also want to make sure that our line items handle things like multi-line strings. So we're going to handle the multi-line strings first. So I'm just going to copy a couple of these and just change some of these numbers. And I'm going to change some of these too. And I'm going to come to maybe this random one. And we're going to say this is a line item with a very long description to test that our word wrapping is implemented and working as intended. Let's go ahead and run this, and it's clearly not working. Well, that sucks. So to fix this, what I would suggest is coming down here to our line items function and basically coming to the unit name and using this as a multicell. So I'm going to pdf.multicell, and our width is going to be exactly the same. So we can just copy that. Our height is going to be the same, I think. Maybe it's times 1.25 to give it a little bit more spacing. but I think line height's fine actually. Our text string is going to be this part. Our border string is going to be the same part. Our line, I don't know if we need the line break. So these two are going to be the same. Our text alignment, we want it to be PDF or gof PDF.align left, because it's the very first column, and our fill is going to be false. So we can do all this, run it, see what we get. Okay, so we've got word wrapping now, but it doesn't take that into account when it creates the next line. So I'm going to actually do this 1.25. I think that spacing is a little bit nicer. Maybe not, I don't know. So what we want to do is figure out how many lines this ends up being. So from what I've seen, the easiest way to do this in the gof PDF package is to say, let's do temp is going to be pdf.splitlines. And if you pass in some text and the width that you're using, it'll tell you based on the current font on the PDF how many lines it'll be, or it'll actually give you a 2D slice of all the lines. So we're going to pass this into W, and then for the text we need to make our line item.unit name a byte slice, and then we should get something back. So now we can say that our max y is going to be something like the length of temp times, it's going to be times line height, because that's how many lines we have. But we also want to subtract one here. So we want to subtract one line height because we want to, basically when we're dealing with lines, we assume that our cursor is at the top left of the line. So if we added one for every single line, even if it's only one line, we end up having too much spacing at the bottom. And I can actually show you that without doing this minus part. So we get the max y. We still need to use the max y though. When we come down here to the line part, what I'm actually going to do is say if max y is greater than y, y equals max y. Then we're going to run this. That's not what I wanted. There we go. Invalid item 163. Oh, one of these needs to be. So we're going to make this a float 64 times this part. So that part becomes a float 64. And what else are we missing? This is supposed to be unit name. Okay, then we can run this. And that didn't work. What happened? My guess is, that's supposed to use y. Whenever we do max y here, we calculate this, but it needs to be y plus that. We have to take where we are relative into consideration. And here you see there's the big gap at the bottom, and that's what I was trying to get to with the line. Even if there's only one line here, it's going to move it down to that one line's worth. So we can definitely remove one line height here. And you could just take length of temp and do -1 here. That works as well. So it's whichever one you want to do. So now when we run this, we've got, this is a line item with a very long description to test that our word wrapping is implemented and working as intended, and it looks all correct. We've got a lot of spacing here for that line item. Everything is good. So with all of that working, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this line. We've got this whole thing keeping track of what our new y is. So this right here is our line items, individual or real data. I don't know, something like that. So, and this is line items headers. So what we want now is subtotal, etc. And what we're going to do here is basically just set the font. Let's do times. And you'll see me, I think I mentioned this, you'll see me setting this stuff a ton because you never know which functions are actually modifying it. So I found that every little new subsection you get to, it's nice just to go ahead and just do this all over again. So pdf.setTextColor, 180s across the board. X and Y are going to be, our X is going to be W divided by, let's do like 1.75. I think that's a reasonable spot. It's not quite, we're not putting it right in the middle. We're putting it a little bit to the left, I think. And then our Y is going to be Y plus line height times 2.25. And I should probably get the line height here. Text size, font size, I'm not sure. It's one of those two. Just to make sure we have the correct line height based on the current font size. So basically I'm going to say based on this last item, I want to move down a little bit before I put my subtotal. And then we're going to go ahead and move there. And we're going to do pdf.cell format like we were doing up here with a lot of these. So I'm going to copy this one. And the width, I think 80 is plenty for what we're doing here. Line height makes sense. The text is going to be subtotal. And I think 80 is fine because I think that'll fit the whole word subtotal, and that's the only word I'm worried about. We want a line right. That should be everything. I think a line right makes sense for this. Okay, so there's our subtotal. I think that makes sense. It doesn't need to line up with any of these columns because it's something separate. And then from here, we want to do x is going to be something on the right. So we could do, again, we could just do x is x plus something or whatever. I think I'm going to go ahead and just use, I think this is the value I used whenever 119 was my width. So I'm going to go ahead and copy all of this. And let's just put a random number, 1234.50. And I'm going to need to change this text, but that's fine. Let's do borders for these, border full. And then we're going to do, set the text color here to be 50, 50, 50. Let's run this. Okay, I could make this a little bigger if I wanted, this box, but I don't actually see a reason to. You know, I could move the subtotal to the right too if I wanted, but I think it's fine where it is. So I'm just going to let them be. So border none. I mostly just wanted to make sure the borders weren't overlapping with each other in any way. So now that we have this right here working, what I'm actually going to do is make it a function. So I'm going to say trailer line maybe, PDF, go fpdf.fpdf. It's going to take in an x and a y, which are float 64s. And it's going to take in a label, which is a string, and it's going to take in a, let's say it's a string. And it's going to take in an amount, which is a float 60, or it's an int. And I think that's all it needs. I think based on everything else we have here. And it's going to return a new x and y. So I'm going to say orig x, it's going to be x, return orig x and y. Again, I want to keep the original x-axis for these. It's just something I think is easier for my code. And I mean, I wouldn't actually have to do that. I could do something different, but this is fine. So then inside of here, I want to take all of this code. So I'm going to grab all of this, paste it in. And this is going to be the label. And this is going to be 2 USD, the amount passed in. And let's see here. This is probably too much. I probably just want this to be, trying to think. I probably just want to write exactly where it tells me to write. So my guess is that I probably want to do something like let the y be and not change the x either. So just let the two of them be. I need to put a colon here for line height because it's a new variable inside of this function. W we don't have defined either. So W is going to be pdf.get page size. I need to put a colon here. So I think that's everything. I didn't modify the y, we'll have to do that. And at the end, I'm going to say y equals y plus line height times 1.5 because I want to move down a little bit. All right, so we put this here. I think it ends up being, we're not calling this yet, so let me go ahead and get this. So I want to run this, then I'm going to say trailer line. It's going to be PDF, X, Y. The label is going to be subtotal. The amount is going to be, I'm just going to put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for now. And we're going to say X comma Y equals that. And then I'm going to delete all of this extra stuff. And the reason I'm doing this is now I want to be able to do tax and say that's like 1, 2, 3. And then I want to do like total and say this is some random number. So now we get subtotal, tax, and a total here, and this all seems to be working fine. So the last thing you might want to do is put a line between those two, at least as far as like formatting them. And then we're going to look at actually calculating the real numbers. So what I might want to do here is I might want to say pdf.line. And I think my draw color right now is still pretty light, so we're fine. Our X, Or I could just do pdf.set draw color, 180s. And our X here is going to be, let's just use the X we have. And then what widths are we using here? We're using like 119, 180 plus a little bit of a gap between the two. So we probably want something like 200, maybe 220. And then our Y is going to stay exactly the same. We want this to be a straight horizontal line. And this is going to be the same Y. Let's go ahead and try that. All right, so we might want some more spacing after this line. Y equals Y plus line height. And that's a little bit too much. And I do like divided by 2 and times 0.5 at different times. Not sure why I should be more consistent with that across the document, but I'm not. So our line ends up being pretty decent here. Maybe we want to do X plus, I don't know, 25.0, or maybe we'll just do plus 20, and we'll take this 20 off here. Make it go a little bit further to the right so it's a little bit more. Well, that's not what I wanted. I guess that's closer. There we go. It's not too bad. I think that's all good. What I'm going to do now is calculate these. So we're going to come to the top. I'm going to add a constant, which is tax rate, and we're going to say it's 0.09 maybe. I'm just picking an arbitrary tax rate here. And then up top, I'm also going to create something like down below this, we're going to say total is going to be 0 for each line item in the range of line items. I'm going to say total plus equals li dot price per unit times li dot units purchased. And we're going to say total USD is going to be 2 USD total. All right, and then we're going to say tax is going to be total times tax rate. And this needs to become an integer. And we'll probably have to cast this to a float 64 to actually do the math. Or convert it rather, not cast it, but that's fine. So we got the tax. And then we're going to do, we'll eventually use that tax down below. We'll do tax USD is going to be 2 USD tax. And this is actually subtotal, not total. So we'll do subtotal. And where am I missing something? Tax USD declared not used, subtotal USD declared not used. That's fine. So I'm going to come down here. I know I have total USD somewhere else where I'm doing this right here. So I want this to be, I actually want that to be total USD. So up here I need total still. So total equals subtotal plus tax. And we're going to say total USD is going to be 2 USD total. All right, so we've got all these here. These are all the calculations. And I'm doing them up top just because I know I'm going to use them in different spots, and I think that makes sense. So we don't need total USD here, and this is going to become total USD. That was total USD before. I just typed it a minute ago. And then coming down through here, this is going to be subtotal tax. And these are all, I can pass in integers because I set up our trailer line to take them in. It might have made more sense just to pass in 2 strings. But for now I didn't, so I'm going to leave this as is. So now we'll go run, and subtotal USD is declared and not used, tax USD is declared and not used. That's because I don't actually use them. So we can just delete those two. Okay, so we have a real value, and that's mostly coming from this paint that I have that's ridiculously overpriced. So I'm going to go ahead and change this and say this is maybe we got 5 gallons of paint at $33 a gallon. I don't know. I don't know what paint costs these days. So I think that's everything for this. We have most of the invoice. Actually, I take that back. There's one more thing we never did in the banner that I want to do. So if we come up here to the banner, we create the invoice. In between these two, we're going to do banner logo. So we want to do pdf.image options. Image is going to be images/jump.png. The X and the Y. Do we have an X or a Y? I know what this X is. And I know roughly what this X is going to be, but I don't know the width of the two. So I'm going to have to go ahead and mess with these. Let's just do something like 200.0 and we'll figure it out here in a minute. I'm going to actually draw the grid so I can figure it out with the grid. All right, coming back up to the option, our Y is going to be, I assume, whatever Y we're currently at, which is probably 0. For now, we'll do 0. Our width, I don't know how wide it's going to be. I'm going to put a 0, make that dynamic. The height here, I want this image to be banner height. Flow is going to be false. For the options, I think we covered this briefly in the very introduction video. I can infer the file type from the actual file, and read DPI I can put as true. And then link and link string can be 0 and empty string. Let's go run that and see. Okay, so that's clearly not where we want it to be, and banner height seems too big. Let's say we did banner height divided by 1.5 maybe. Let's see what that looks like. I think that's a better size. So knowing we're doing banner height divided by 1.5, that means that it's the same as banner height. So okay, we're doing banner height divided by 1.5, so we need to take whatever's left of the banner and make sure we use that for our Y. So we're going to say 0 plus banner height divided by 1.5 divided by 2.0, so we cut that in half. And that should center it vertically. Unless I just did that wrong. Oh, I want to do banner height minus this. Banner height minus this right here. And I want to divide that entire thing by 2.0. There we go. Now we're centered vertically. And now I need to figure out the middle spacing. So I start somewhere around 214 and 336. So knowing those two, 275 looks to be a pretty good middle point, you know, between those two, because it's 2 columns this way and 2 columns from that one. So around 275 is where we want it to be, but we want it to be, you know, this isn't going to be right because it's the top left corner. So knowing that, maybe it makes more sense here to try to figure out what the height is actually being used. And we could go calculate that and everything. But I think I'm just going to sort of tweak this and just figure it out. So I can look at the gopher's nose and just try to figure it out based off of that. And his nose isn't quite in the middle of that line. Now it's pretty much in the middle of that line. I think that's close enough to center that we can use it. All right, so assuming that's everything with the gopher, let's comment this out and look at our PDF. Okay, I think that's what we're gonna call complete. I think that looks pretty sweet. It's not the best invoice in the world for sure, but it's definitely not the worst. Yeah, that's it for this video. The next video, we're going to focus on creating the course completion certificate, but hopefully this was helpful to sort of just see the entire process of trying to design something with GoFPDF and, you know, generating an invoice, keeping track of these y-axes and everything. So you know that you can do it in Go if you need to. Now, I will recommend that if you are going to actually create PDFs, invoices, maybe not always, but a lot of the time you'll probably end up with something quicker if you do an HTML version. And then you use a tool that converts HTML to a PDF. Generally speaking, that's just much, much easier because HTML is just something everybody knows how to, not everybody, but most people figure out at some point or another because they build web apps, and you're probably going to be serving your invoice through a web app or something. So learning to just make the invoice in HTML and then generate a PDF from it is a pretty valuable skill to learn as well. So that's it for this one. I'll see you in the next video where we create the course completion cert. Okay, it's our last video here. I've got a bunch of code here that I don't actually want. There were two things I wanted to sort of do. The first is just give you a rough idea of some of the things you could do with this package if you wanted to build a wrap around it. And to do this, I'm going to end up getting rid of most of my code here. I'm just going to go ahead and just delete all this. I need most of this deleted. I'll keep this stuff. I think we're going to want the page size, but I'll comment it out for now. And I'm going to come all the way down here and keep most of this. I'm going to make it cert.pdf. Keep that. I'm going to scroll all the way back up. I want to keep at least one polygon here for you. Okay, so I don't have banner height. Let me go ahead and just say, let's say we were doing, let's say we were creating something like Let me get the width and height here. We're creating a polygon. Let's say we're doing that course completion certificate, which is going to look something like this. We want to make this triangle up top. So the way we might do this now is we might start at 0, 0, might go to width 0. We might then go to width and we'll say height divided by 9.0. And then we're going to let that connect back to 0, 0. We don't need this anymore. And then we're going to need two colors here. We're just going to go ahead and just hard code this. I think this is right. Okay, so we've got this color. We're going to want a second color, which I'm going to get here in a second. Let's say we get this fill color and we put it here, and this is going to be something a little bit different. Let's just do 125, 80, and 99. It's not going to be the right color, but it's fine. And this is the triangle that's going to be, I think I did these in the wrong order. I'm going to do this triangle now, and I don't want to, designing it this way is kind of annoying. So what I'm actually going to do is just draw it as if it's like a full triangle going the whole way over to here. And then I'm just going to go ahead and just draw this one over top of it. So this one was 0. This is the first one. I'm going to pull this all to the bottom. Paste it down here. And then here we're going to start at 0. Not 0 height. It's going to be 0, 0. We're going to move down a little bit. So maybe 0, and this is going to be height divided by 9.0. And then we're going to move all the way to the right. So it's going to be width, 0. So both of these are going to be similar. The difference is that this one's at 0 height and this one's at width height. And we're going to draw these two. And as a result, we're going to end up with something that looks like go run main.go and open cert.pdf. Well, I got a whole bunch of stuff that's not defined. It's because I got to get rid of all this stuff. I got to get rid of all these functions. I don't have a banner height anymore, so I'm just going to go ahead and just always set my text color to this. And we'll run this. I'm not creating it, the banner or anything now, but you see how this creates something similar to what we had. And there we go, we have that. I want to make this orientation landscape. Let's go ahead and run this again. Let's resize this so you can see it. But there's our, our certificate has those two triangles. Now, when we're doing this, you'll notice that we have to pass in the fill here. We have to do the fill color somewhere else. There's a lot of things going on here. So one of the ways that you might want to go about like making this easier to work is, for instance, you might want to do something like type PDF struct. And I'm really just trying to show you that you can wrap this in some way to make it, maybe it is easier for you, maybe it's not. So that's up to you. So we'll do fpdf. It's going to be gofpdf.fpdf. And then we might have like an X and a Y, which are float 64s that tell us where we are in that PDF. And then we could have function like, we don't actually use this right now, so I'm not going to, we could have basically the move functions is what I was trying to show you here. Move, and move is going to be relative to wherever we currently are. So if you remember when we were working with PDF, we would do things like pdf.move to, and we give it an absolute X and Y. Maybe we just want to move relative, because that's what we did a lot of the time is we had this X and the Y in our code that we moved relative. We always did this X equals X plus something, because we were moving relative to wherever we were. Well, knowing that we did that a lot, it might be nice to have this XY float 64, and maybe this is X delta, Y delta, and we do something like p.x, p.y equals p.x plus X delta, p.y plus Y delta. So we've got this, it just adds those two different, it just does a delta. And we could still have an absolute move. We can do move abs, X, Y, float 64. And here we can just do p.x, p.y, if I could type today, equals X, Y. So we've got ways to move. But then the hard part is that now these, we've got these move functions, but they don't really do anything. When we call like text, it's not going to use this X and Y. When we call cell, it's not going to use this because we're not actually moving anywhere. So one of the things we could do is we could take move abs and do something like p.fpdf.move to p.x, p.y, And we could again do that up here. So now we know we're getting moved to those things. So when we call these, it's going to move us in this PDF because we have a pointer to it. But in addition to that, we could also do something like func p PDF text, and this will be a text string. And if you recall correctly, in the p.fpdf, when we called text, this asks for an x and a y in the text string. Well, we can sort of simplify this now and make it so that all of them are exactly the same by doing p.x, p.y, text string is just going to be text. And if you wanted, you could even inside of here, you could figure out, with the cells, maybe cells tended to be a little bit off. So maybe that the X wasn't different. So maybe you could add an offset here that based on the current line height, it calculated how much it had to add the X to make sure text and cell wrote at the same spot. That would be a little bit trickier because it might vary based on font size and stuff, but you could try to mess with things like that. You can also just do something like func p PDF Polygon. And again, this is going to take a slice of go.fpdf.point type. Long term, if you were taking this type and exposing the package, you probably wouldn't want to use this nested point type. You'd probably need your own point type. But I think it's fine for what we're doing right now. And then, we might want some options for this or something later, but we could go ahead and just assume that we're always going to be filling it. Maybe we're always filling our polygons, so it makes sense to do for, I don't need a for loop. So we need p.fpdf.polygon, and we can just do points and fill all the time. So, now we can do things like this without worrying about this part. But another thing that would be nice is if we could pass in the color. So what I'm going to add here is also something similar. I'm going to do, let's come up here and do type PDF option. And if you remember one of the earlier videos, I talked about like functional options, and we're not going to I'm not really thinking this through. So I'm not getting a perfect solution to this, but we could do something sort of like that where we have a PDF option. It's a goFPDF.fpdf is what it takes in. And then we have a function like fill color that will take in a color.rgba, and it returns a PDF option. So we're going to return a function here that takes in a PDF, goFPDF.fpdf, and it's going to do something along that line. So we need to get the color here, so we could do fpdf.setFillColor, and this could be c.r, c.g, and c.b. And it's probably going to complain. Yeah, I expected that. No, this is PDF. So it can't use uint as int, and that's fine. We can fix that here in a minute. But another thing that I want to mention is that with this RGBA, it has an alpha, but we can't really use the alpha anywhere. And I actually want to use that here. I'm just going to assume I always have a white background, and my alpha is going to be based off of that. So I'm going to actually create a little helper function called RGB. You pass in a color.rgba, and it's going to return int. And I'm returning ints because that's what setFillColor wants. So I think it's just going to make my life easier to do that instead of uints. And what this code's going to do, the calculation for alpha is basically, if you have a white background, that is, I'm pretty sure it's something like 255 times 1.0 minus your alpha is, you take this, so this will be your alpha delta, and then you're going to have your colors. So c.r is going to become c.r times alpha, which is going to be a fraction. It's supposed to be a number between, this all assumes alpha is between 0 and 1. It's some sort of decimal between those two. So we're going to try to make this work in our code. And then we're going to use that with fill color, and then we're going to actually use this to set some colors. And then the goal with all of this is then going to be to come down to Polygon and say that you can pass in ops, which are PDF options. And then we're going to come in here, I'm going to say for each option in the range of ops, and we're going to say PDF, we're going to say opt, and we're passing p.fpdf, and apply those options. So coming up here, the first thing that I'm going to note is that c.a is the alpha. It's a uint 8, so it's going to be between 0 and 255. So we need to actually take this value, and we need to turn it into a number between 0 and 1. So we're going to say alpha is going to be c.a, float 64 version of this, divided by 255.0. So that should give us a number between 0 and 1. And then from there, we're going to go ahead and say alpha delta, or alpha, we'll say white, is going to be 255 times 1.0 minus alpha. And then for each color, we're going to return c.r. Actually, we're going to say red, green, blue are going to be, this is c.r, so it's float 64 of this times alpha. And we want to cast all of this into an int. I think that's what we want. So that'll go to the R. So here I can just do G and B, and this will be G, then B. So that gets us like the value after we apply the alpha here, but we also need to add the alpha white to this. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And this actually needs to become an int with all of these. So we'll add that here for all these. Then we're going to return RGB. And I think that's right. So here what we're going to do is we're going to say RGB are going to be RGB of the color. And then here we'll just pass in RGB. All right, so I'm going to hope that this worked. We're going to come down here and test it. We're going to go ahead and say this is going to become FPDF. It's not the actual PDF. Or it is the underlying one, but and then we're going to say that PDF is going to be PDF with FPDF is going to be FPDF, and X is going to be 0, Y is going to be 0 to start. And we don't actually move to those spots, so technically they aren't going to do anything, so maybe it just makes sense not to define them. And now from here, we can actually come down here and say pdf.polygon, like we're doing, except I want to set some colors. So I'm going to say primary is going to be this color here. So actually it's not, it's going to be this color here. Color.rgba. And I want 103, 60, 79. And then our alpha is going to be 255 because this one doesn't have any alpha. And then secondary, I feel like, oh, no wonder. My cat's laying on my keyboard. None of my keys are working. I have two keyboards and I can't use the mechanical one recording, and she was laying on the mechanical keyboard. It's the downside to having a cat here. And we're going to set this alpha to 220. And then we're going to test this by calling pdf.polygon, and you see that I got rid of that fill color. I'm going to call polygon, pass in these points, and then the second is going to be fill color with secondary. I think that's the one I used there. Then here, this is going to be primary. Fill color primary. I'm going to get rid of this set fill color function. And then we're going to do fpdf.output and close. So I'm still interacting with both pieces right now because I haven't fully implemented this wrapper, but I'm just sort of testing it to see if it works the way I intended. So we run this, and you'll see that it appears to be working. This right here, alpha, appears to be there. If I change this to like 100 and run this, you'll see that this appears to have a much more alpha, and that looks like it's calculating it roughly right. I think I got the calculation right, but I could be wrong. So now we have a nice, easy way to sort of tweak these things and set all these shapes. So I just wanted you to see roughly that that is an option. So whenever you're like messing around with these things and you want to find a way to use this package and make it more effective for you, you can build little wrappers like this that if it's going to make you build your things quicker, you can do stuff like that. And for our invoice, that might have made sense. Maybe we'd have a type like this with a bunch of functions like line item and stuff like that 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 we use pretty commonly, and we can just sort of easily slap them into our PDF. Now that I have this top and bottom part, I'm just going to try to go through the rest of the document and just show you. This one's not too crazy complicated. It's basically, if we look here, we're going to draw two more polygons here in the bottom. We're going to put some text here that's just centered, another line of text that's centered. This is centered text. This is a multicell that's centered. And then when we get down here to the image and the other stuff, these are probably like the hardest parts, is the date, the instructor, and the Gopher logo. But again, not too crazy hard. So we need two more polygons. This is the bottom logos. And for these, they're basically going to be, we want width, height, so the bottom right-hand corner. And then from there, we're going to go to width, and we're going to go up a little bit. So we're going to do height minus we're going to do height divided by 8. So this should be a little bit shorter than the top one because we're dividing it by, actually, it might end up being bigger. I don't remember. And then for this, we're going to end up going to the, how did I do this? I think this ends up being 0. Trying to think, how did I do the bottom? Let's do 0 here. And this is going to be height. I think this is what I did. I think they're exactly the same as the top, but I don't remember. It looks like this one cuts off a little bit sooner, so maybe it wasn't the full width. Maybe I did something a little bit shorter for this, but I'm not sure which I prefer. I'll do something different here and just see what I prefer, and then we can make both of them consistent. So maybe we're going to do something like 0 minus width divided by 6, something along those lines. That should give us, or I think I just want width divided by 6. Yeah, I want width divided by 6 because I want almost to the left, which will be, it'll be like 1/6 the way in. And then for this next one, we're going to do 0h. 0h minus h divided by 8.0. And this is supposed to be 0 up top. And then again, we're going to do width, and this is going to be, it's going to be width minus width divided by 6 in this one because I want it mostly on the right, and this is going to be height. This is supposed to be an H, not a G. So let's go ahead and look at these and see which one I like more. I think I like this better, where it's not quite the, it's not quite the whole way over. So I'm going to go ahead and make these all very similar. This is 0, 0. So I go from the top left, I'm going to go to the top right, I'm going to go down. That's actually not what I want. I want to go from width divided by 6 all the way over to the top right. This is, oh, that's not right. Okay, I want to start at the top left. I'm going to go down a little bit, and then I want to go up here. This is going to be width divided by 6. And you can see here that I'm having trouble mentally mapping this, but that's fine. So we're going to go from 0, 0, it's top left. We're going to go all the way to the right. And I think this is the primary one. So if I look at the cert, yeah, this is the one where I want, where we start to actually be width divided by 6. I think that's probably wrong. Either that one's wrong or this one was wrong. I'm not actually sure which. This is supposed to be W minus. That's what it was. All right, so width divided by 6 is going to come in a little bit, and the height's going to be 0. Then it's going to go to the full width, so it's going to the top right. And it's going to come down a little bit, then it's going to connect the two. So I think that's right. Yeah, that looks correct. I think we're fine with that. So that gets us a rough outline for our course completion certificate. My cat's clicking stuff. Give me a second. Okay. This should be all the banners. So top and bottom banner. I'll say graphics. So now we're going to go ahead and add some text. I think what we're going to do is just do fpdf. I don't have anything for setting fonts here. Again, you could do something like text. You could have it pass in a font or something like that, but we're not going to do any of that. And you could even have a lot of these functions calculate how much the text took up and move your cursor around a little bit, but I'm not going to do any of that again. So set font times, we'll do bold, and we'll do 50 as the size. We want this to be pretty big. And we're going to set the text color to 0s, because I want this to be it's supposed to be font color, I think. Or is it? Oh, it's fpdf.set text color. That's why it's complaining. And then we're going to pdf.move abs. We're going to go 0, 100. So we're going to go down a little bit, but we're still going to be the far left corner. And again, all these calculations I did ahead of time, so I'm just sort of using them. fpdf.get font size. And then I'm going to do fpdf.right aligned. And right aligned is similar to just text, except you can set the width, or you can set 0, which is the full width of the document minus any margins. And then I can just set line height to be line height. The text string, I can put this to be whatever I want it to be. Certificate of completion. And then the align string, the reason I'm using right aligned instead of like text is that this is going to align it for me without having to make a cell of the entire thing. I can just say, 0 is the full width of the document, and the align string is going to be gofpdf.align center. And I'm just sort of trying to introduce you to a couple different ways that you can write text. And then we're going to do pdf.move 0, and we're going to do line height times 2.0. So we're going to move down a little bit. So if we go ahead and run this, we got certificate of completion written. It's very dark. Maybe this is a little bit too dark. Maybe we want to do something like 50s. I think that's a little bit better. It's hard to tell much of a difference, but I think that's fine. So now we're going to do fpdf.setFont. I'm going to make it Arial, and this is where we're going to put the user's name, or whoever completed's name. So let's say you ran your program, you could have a flag up here. Maybe it's something like flag.stringvar, or let's do string. Name value is going to be the empty string. Usage is the name of the person who completed the course. And then we're going to do flag.parse. And this is going to be name. We're going to say name equals this. So then down here we can say the text is going to be, let's do line height first. fpdf.getFontSize. I want to do fpdf.writeAligned again. This is going to be exactly like before. So 0, line height, except this is going to be name, and I have to do a pointer to it because name is a pointer. It's a pointer to a string. So I have to put that asterisk to make sure it's passing in the value of the string. And then go fpdf.align center. And let's run this and see what we get. That's not right. Oh, I didn't pass in a flag, no wonder. There we go, passing in a name. That doesn't seem right. Oh, this is the this certificate is awarded to section. No wonder. So I'm going to keep that. I'm just going to do fpdf.writeAligned and keep the same thing, 0 line height. This certificate is awarded to go fpdf.align center. Then I'm going to do pdf.move 0 and line height times 2.0. So again, we're just moving down by the line height, and this is all the move relative stuff, so that's nice. I'm going to go ahead and just, I don't have a font that's like cursive or anything like that, so we're just going to use times again. If you wanted something like that, you could actually point it to a font when you create this PDF document right here. You could point it to some fonts and use some local stuff, and you could actually get some fonts that look sort of like cursive, so for signatures and things like that, you could do it. But I'm just going to use times for this, because I know everybody should have that, and I'm not going to have to walk through like how to install a font and all this other, small details. Line height is going to be fpdf.getFontSize. And this is something that we probably could actually clean up. This move, or this number here, you could have some functions that are like double space, single space, or like line height. Just make line height a function on PDF so that we could just use that throughout the rest of the document. I'm just going to go keep doing it this way because I don't want to go up here and modify this stuff too much. I just wanted to give you an example of how you could do that stuff. And then we're going to do, which one are we on? We want to write this with the name. And let's see what it looks like. All right, this certificate is awarded to John Calhoun. And maybe this font color, you might want to change it, but I'm going to let it be. All right, so what else do we need? fpdf.setFont, and we're going to do Arial. You notice that I'm trying to keep the name and like the header in times. Everything else is mostly just going to be in Arial, I think. It might end up not looking amazing, but that's okay. I think 22 is what we're going to do. This is supposed to be like the paragraph that is for successfully completing sections. So we're going to try that. So we need the line height and the right aligned. I'm going to grab all of this again. And this isn't right aligned though. We're probably going to have text that's too big for that. For successfully completing all 20 programming exercises in the Gophercises programming course for budding gophers. I think probably capitalize gophers here. So I'm trying to keep a long string that sort of fills it out and makes it look decent. And let's go ahead and run this, and you're going to see that this isn't going to work. Yeah, that looks like, ugh. I also didn't move, so I need to do something like pdf.move, 0, line height times 2.0. It did end up wrapping it, though. I didn't think that this one wrapped, but apparently right align does wrap. So, interesting. I did not know that. That would have made things much easier for some of the other stuff I did, but that's okay. And this gap looks to be really big because it's using the current line height instead of this old one. So you could actually basically you could say set the font to this and then move based on that, so then it's going to be even. You'll see that the spacing above it and below it should be about the same then, because we have line height times 2 and line height times 2 here. I think that's what I wanted. Although I have line height times 1.5. So I could do here, go fpdf.align top. I think it's doing align middle by default. That's not what I wanted. All right, maybe I just want to make this 1.5. Oh, I didn't recalculate line height. That's my issue. There we go. Now the spacing is a little bit more normal, but I still don't like it. Let's not do this. Let's just take this and do like 1.75 maybe. Yep, that seems about fine. It's not perfect, but it's fine. All right, so what do we need now? I think I'm going to do the gopher first. I think we're going to make that first. So we'll do fpdf.image options. Images/jump.png. The x is going to be the width of the document divided by 2.0. And then we need to figure out how big the gopher is going to be. Because right now we're in the middle. We need to move it half of the width of the gopher. So let's say we're going to make the gopher 100 pixels wide, or 100 units wide, whatever that is. So subtract 50 here. The y is whatever our current y is, pdf.y. And we could write an image function on top of our PDF type again to take those two into account for us, but we're just not. The width is going to be 100.0. This is double this 50 part. And the height we're going to make 0, so it's going to determine the height to keep the same aspect ratio. Flow will be false. Options are going to be image options, and we'll just do read DPI true. Not sure why that matters though, because I don't think we're actually using the read DPI. Then link and link string are going to be 0, empty string. Let's run this. Well, that y is not good. We need to move down some. So we'll do pdf.move 0 line height times 1.75 maybe. But we have 2 lines here. I'm just realizing it, and they're both 1.5. So we definitely need 3 plus another. So we'll do 3.75. So I was trying to type, but I typed 1 somehow. Okay, that's not bad. I think I'm going to do like 4.5. See what that's like first. I think I like that better. It's got a nice little spacing there. Okay, so now is when we're going to draw the grid, because I need to figure out where to put this text. And okay, so when we look at this, I'm going to pass fpdf in. We've got all the text here. At least when we look at the cert, the line and the line under it, we can definitely always just hard code. You know, because we don't plan on changing the fonts or anything, so we can just figure out what makes sense and hard code those. So looking back at our document, I don't remember exactly what I used, but it probably looked at here and I probably figured, all right, something like, 475, and we're going to go all the way over to like this spot here. And we'll do the same thing here. We'll go from here all the way to like 1 cell away. So those are the numbers we're going to use. I'm just going to go ahead and look at my code here and see the numbers I settled on were fpdf.setFillColor, 100, 100, 100. So these are like a little bit darker line, but it's not, super light. And then I did fpdf.rectangle, and my x and y, I think I chose 60 for the x. So if we look here, 60 is somewhere, it's somewhere around right here. So it's a little bit in. And then we're going to go ahead and do the y is going to be pdf.y. The width, I think 240 is what I settled on. And then the height, I think I did 1.0, and the style is just a fill. And I could have just used line here because I'm just doing 1 pixel or 1 unit. I think it would have been about the same, but I just like this. And then 490.0 is what I chose for the second part. Again, that's 475. I came a little bit in here. I think I did a little bit more calculating when I actually did it myself, but. All right, so those are up too far. So I need to move some. So we'll do pdf.move 0 and 65.0. And this 65 came from, again, I looked at where the line was and figured out roughly a rough number for pushing it down and then just went with it. And I did all this whenever I created this course completion certificate on my own. So that's really all I was doing is just using this grid to try to give me some ballpark numbers. So I like those two. I think they're about centered. They might not be perfect, but they're pretty close. So from here, I'm going to put some text underneath of them. So I'm going to do fpdf.setFont, Arial. We'll do 12 point, pdf.move, 0, line height divided by 1.5. So we're going to move a little bit down from where those lines are. And then we're going to do fpdf.setTextColor. I want this to be 100, 100, 100, similar to the fill color we used, because this isn't as important as the information above it. And right now we're trying to write the date and the instructor, these tags underneath. And then I'm going to go ahead and do, So, how did I do this? I think what I did here was I did fpdf.text, or actually I have pdf.text. And this just takes in a string, but I need to move myself. So I'm going to do pdf.move abs. And I'm saying move abs because I know I want 60, or maybe 60 is how far in my line is. So maybe I want a little bit more than that. And our line was 240. So maybe I want 60 plus 100.0. I'm going to assume, we'll just do right in the middle, 120. So that should give us our X that's right in the middle of the line. And our Y, I'm just going to use pdf.y. And then I'm going to go ahead and do text is going to be just the string date. Then I'm going to do pdf.move abs. And again, here I'm going to take 490 that we have up here. And I know this is 240 wide, so I'm going to add 120 to it. And I know this isn't going to be correct, but I'm going to come back and tweak it here in a second. And I'm going to make this instructor. Now let's go ahead and just run this. Okay, so obviously these aren't centered because we have to figure out the width of this word instructor and date. Now, there might be a good way to do this inside of the package. I don't really know. We could also potentially use a cell or something like that, but I think what I ended up doing is I ended up just tweaking these values until I found something that looked roughly centered to me. So I think what I did was chose 100 for both of these, and it worked pretty decent. I think date's a little bit more to the left than it should be. This is probably like 110. But maybe not. Maybe 100 was right. So this is 1, 2 and a half, 1, 2 and a little bit of a half. This one again is something similar. It's not, maybe not perfect, but I think it's close enough that nobody's going to really notice. And now we want to go ahead and move ourselves back up. So we wrote this text. We want to go ahead and move back up above it so we can start putting the dynamic stuff, the actual dynamically inserted date, and then the dynamically inserted user's name. So I'm going to do underscore, well, how did I do this in my original code? So I moved down line height divided by 1/2. So let's say we move up by that much. Although we've moved abs at this point, so that's not going to work. That's unfortunate. It's going to make it trickier. So I'm going to do move abs, and I'm going to do 60.0 because that's the start of the line. And then I'm going to do pdf.y minus, because we didn't change the y. So we can do line height divided by 1.5. So we're going to subtract that part off. So that should put us back to right where we drew the line, or not where we drew the line. It should put us like a little bit above it, I think. Then we're going to do fpdf.setFont times empty string, and we'll do like 22 as the size. It's going to be a little bit bigger because this information matters. And we'll do fpdf.set text color. Maybe this one's going to be a little bit darker at 50, 50, 50. And then, let's do fpdf.text, or pdf.text, sorry. 52918. And then I'm going to do pdf.move. We need to move our X by a lot. So from the 60, we want to go to 490. So we're going to move back to 430. Or we can just do move abs. 490.0 and pdf.y. And then we're going to do pdf.text. And this will be Jonathan Calhoun. And then maybe since we're running it, we'll just see what it goes. All right, so these are both on the far left side. So we know that's working. The real question is, how do we like make it a little bit better? I think one of the ways we could do it is just do something like fpdf.cell format maybe. So the width is going to be the 240 that we did for the line. The height is going to be line height, and we should probably calculate a new line height here. It's going to be fpdf.font size. Text string here is going to be this string. Border string, let's go ahead and add gofpdf.border full, just so we can look at it. This, I'm just going to put gofpdf.linebreak none. And a line string. I will say with the X and Y, one of the issues you could also run into is that since we called cell format directly, this could potentially move our cursor. So you would also have to take that into consideration when you're creating functions like this, that you might have to, if you're doing a wrapper, that you might have to, account for them moving your cursor and then updating the cursor yourself, or calculate or asking, the PDF package what the new X and Y is. So what was this supposed to be? What's after ln is align string, so we want gofpdf.align center. And then we're going to do fill. It's going to be false. 0 empty string. And then we're going to do move apps again, like we just did, and we're going to do Jonathan Calhoun here. Let's see what this looks like. All right, so the reason we're getting this weird thing is because if you remember correctly, text is the bottom left-hand corner of your text. Cell format is going to be the top left-hand corner. So what we need to do is we need to move our Y a little bit. So we're going to do pdf.move 0 for our X delta. Our Y delta is going to be negative line height, at least. We might want a little bit more than that. So that moves us up onto the line. And then if we do border none, we'll see what this looks like. Need to do it for this one too. Okay, I think that's good. I think we're pretty solid there. And now we can come back through here and we can actually change this to be, this can be John Smith with an H. Can't stand those Johns with an H in their name. No, I'm just kidding. So that's working here. We got John Smith. We can have, I don't know, Bob Barker. Or let's do Michael Scott. That's a better one. All right, so we've got all this working. Now we can come down here, get rid of the draw grid, and we've got this all here. So the only other thing that I might want to toy around with is adding a fake signature down here, like maybe if you wanted a real signature, or maybe, adding some different fonts for this stuff. But I'm just going to sort of mess with the signature part. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to JSignature. And I'm doing JSignature because if you go to the GoFPDF docs, you click in here and you look here at the docs. At some point, there's something here with SVGs. So there's SVG basic right. It takes in this SVG basic type, which I'm going to open in a new tab. And if you read through this, somewhere it talks about what it supports. Maybe SVG rights where it talks about it. Here in the examples where it talks. Basically, it only supports this format provided by JSignature. It doesn't actually do a lot with the images and the other stuff like that. So as a result, this type of thing is, I don't know, the SVG support is what I'm trying to say is not amazing, so you aren't going to get a lot, but you can get a fake signature out of this. So we could have something like, have somebody sign some name like this, and then you could just come grab it. And this isn't my real signature. I'm a little bit weary about giving everybody my real signature. So let's say that I did something like this, and then we calculate the SVG output like this, and we grabbed it all. We can come back here and we can paste it all in. We don't need this part. I'm not really sure why it adds that. I'm going to save it though. And this should be sig.svg, and we'll put that into images. Save it. And now here what we can do is try to make that GoFPDF SVG stuff work. So SVG, you got a width and a height, and the segments, we can parse a file here that looks like what we want, SVG basic file parse. So we'll do SVG is going to be fpdf dot why is this not working well? I'm not getting any code completion. Let me make sure my code works right now. Yeah, it does. So fpdf dot, well, I don't know if my computer's screwing up or what. I'm not getting any code completion for whatever reason, so let's figure out what this is. SVG basic file parse. So let's, oh, that's not in the, that makes more sense. GoFPDF. SVG basic file parse. I'm still not getting completion. And this takes in an SVG file string. So we'll do images slash svg dot, or sig.svg. And I'm going to go ahead and just close this, and close this. And this returns a sig and an error. If error is not equal to nil, we'll panic. Otherwise, we're going to do something like fpdf dot, how do we use this? It looks like we just call, this is HTML though. Where is the, oh, there's the SVG. We get the sig, comes down here and it does some random stuff, and then we do SVG basic write with the sig and the scale. Well, let me just try SVG basic write. SVG basic write with a sig, and then we'll do a 0 or 1.0 as the scale. And we'll comment this out. Let's try running that. I think this needs to be an and. So 146, where are we complaining? All right, so that's a little bit too big. So maybe we want the scale to be 0.8. And then the other thing is that it's going from the top left. I want this to be like a 0.6 maybe. But you can clearly see that that's not where we want it to be. It is going from the top left, but we need to move up because the signature is just very big. So what we're going to do is sig dot, does sig have a height? I think they do. Yeah, it does. Okay, so we'll say pdf.move 0, and this is going to be, what we have line height. So we don't want line height, so we're going to say sig.height minus line height, because we've already moved line height up. And that moved down. I wanted to move negative sig minus that. And that was still too much. And we have to use the scale, that's why. 0.5 times sig times height. All right, so that's a ballpark, right? But I might want this to be down a little bit so that it's, on the line. And we've got some random signature here that is not really my legit signature, but it's fine. Okay, so now we've got the instructor. It's written there. And you could even come up here and just change this to be Jonathan Calhoun or John Calhoun, however you want to do it. And this text was abs, so I got to go ahead and just fix this because I didn't do this the smart way of using a cell format. So let's go ahead and just fix that because I don't feel like messing around with this too much more. So we move down line height divided by 1.5. Let's do by 0.5, and then we're going to come back by 0.5 at the end. And then for here, this is going to be cell format. It's going to be 240 line height. Instructor John Calhoun. Border none, line break, blah, blah, blah. Let's comment this out. And we're going to do the same thing here. Except this is not going to get the plus, that part. This is not going to get the plus. It's just going to be date. Oh, maybe that's why I originally did it the other way, because I couldn't get cell format to work. I'm going to go ahead and just go back to where I was, because I don't feel like messing with this too much. And this is supposed to be 1.5, and this needs to go back to 1.5. And I can bring the grid back to actually make sure that's all good. Make sure it's actually even or centered up pretty decently. We got like 1.5 here and about 1. I think that's pretty close to center. So let's get rid of the draw grid, and then let's finally let's do the date part here. So date is going to be time.now and format date Golang. Let's just go ahead and grab this. Let's go to index, format. So we give it a layout string, and it's going to be, this is like this, the time you pass in, and you tell it the format you want from that. So I swear there was a better example somewhere. Or we could just do month as an integer. So let's do sprintf %d 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 and do date dot month date dot, there's got to be something like a day. There's a time dot date, which I'm going to guess is the actual day of the year. And then there's a day, which is going to be, oh, year month day is just year dot date or d dot date. Well, that makes it easy. Year month day. And here we can do month, day, year. Then we'll do date string. And if you want a different format for that, you can. I don't know why I'm all of a sudden not getting, like, my editor's just not doing any of the normal auto completion stuff. This is just time, nothing else. That's probably not what I wanted. Let's go ahead and save that. Temp.go. Let's go ahead and cat temp. All right, let me open temp. Copy everything here. Paste it. Just make sure it's formatted. Undefined year. I thought I just defined it. Oh, it's YR. Okay, 5/24/2018. So that's the date I'm currently recording this. It'll probably be a couple days till I release it, but all right, we have the entire certificate working. I think that's it for now. Hopefully you can, if you really want the certificate, you can create one for yourself, and that should be it for Gophercises. I really appreciate you taking the time to check out all the exercises. Hopefully you'll check out some of the other courses I've created, and they'll be helpful, as well as, like, I have a bunch of written articles and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm hoping to eventually add some more exercises to Gophercises, or to create some other things that are similar. Maybe instead of, mini exercises, we'll do like web app type things. I've focused more on like web apps, or maybe we'll focus more on like bots, creating, like Slack chatbot, Discord chatbot, Reddit bots, Twitter bots, different things like that. Another idea I've sort of toyed around with is potentially doing hardware type stuff. So maybe writing things like code to, connect with like a Raspberry Pi, maybe look at the different hardware. So maybe outputting stuff to video, or maybe capturing video and doing something with it, or even just looking at like the Wi-Fi network and the Bluetooth and things like that to try to figure out, based on local Bluetooth devices that are you can detect, who is at your house, just sort of like have a little detector that says, hey, the UPS delivery guy is here. So basically, I have a couple different ideas for follow-up type courses and different coding problems that we could work on. But I think for Gophercises, the goal of it was to try to be, somewhat mini exercises that are not incredibly hard to approach. And I think 20 of them is pretty much a good number, because by the end of all 20, you should, if you've been coding along, you should be pretty comfortable with the language. You shouldn't really feel like a beginner at this point. So hopefully that is the case, and hopefully you enjoyed the course.